Chapter 672. Ever since Taoist Nun Wei left, there were no more disturbances in Mount Shenwu. Zhang Yan left all the matters of the sect to Chu Mu Ran and his two brothers while he sealed his cave abode and diligently practiced the 5 elements escape art. In the blink of an eye, 8 years had passed. There were still a few months left until the gathering of the dragon pillars. Zhang Yan felt that he had made some progress in the 5 elements escape technique. If he wanted to improve further, he couldn't do it in a hurry. Thus, he waved his sleeves and closed the forbidden door, stepping out of his cave residence. Jingyu was on duty outside the door every day. When he sensed it, he quickly ran over and bowed. "Welcome back, master." Zhang Yan sat down on the jade couch and asked, "Kai Wei, has Kading returned to the mountain?" Jingyu replied, "Not yet, but there is a letter." He took out a letter from his bosom and presented it with both hands. Zhang Yan took it, opened it, and scanned through it. He understood the situation within, and then he flicked his finger lightly to turn the letter into ash. After that, he said, "Go invite fellow Taoist Zhang over." After a short while, Zhang Boyan entered the cave abode and bowed in front of the seat. Zhang Yan returned the greeting and invited him to take a seat. He said, Zhang, I intend to leave for Chu in the next few days to attend the gathering of the dragon pillars. Come with me." Zhang Boyan already knew that Zhang Yan had such a plan, so he wasn't surprised. He chuckled and said, "The 6th Prince of Chu has sent several letters to invite Manor Head to go. This time, his wish can be fulfilled." Zhang Yan nodded and said, "The 6th Prince has sent quite a number of spiritual herbs. I owe him a favor. Why don't you write a letter to clarify this matter?" Zhang Boyan said, "That's easy." He leaned to the side and cupped his hands. "I wish to bring my disciple Zhao Yang along this time. I wonder if the Manor Head will agree to this?" Zhang Yan smiled and said, "Why not?" The two of them discussed in detail for a while more before Zhang Boyan took his leave. In the following days, Zhang Yan took the time to deal with the mundane affairs that had accumulated over the years. After everything was settled, he prepared to set off. However, the strange thing was that there was still no reply from the 6th Prince. Zhang Yan guessed that there might be some changes, but he didn't think much of it. Emperor Zhongtai's relatives were Zhongtai's disciples in name. However, this generation loved to enjoy pleasure and sensual pleasures. They couldn't stand the solitude of cultivation, and they didn't have the patience to meditate and comprehend the profound. Thus, they were only disciples in name. He did not have much interaction with the orthodox Taoist cultivators. Previously, for the sake of the spiritual herbs. Only then did he politely reply. Since there was no news, there was no need to bother about it. On the 10th day, he summoned Zhang Boyan and his disciple, Song Chuyuan, the lame Taoist, and the others. He turned into a streak of light and headed for Chu country. Because they weren't in a rush, the 4 of them didn't go up to the extreme sky to ride on the astral winds. After traveling for 10 days, they were still 1,000 miles away from Chu country's Daong city. Chu country's capital city was Daong, with tens of millions of residents. It was one of the few metropolises in Dongxing continent. The city was surrounded by 3 rivers and willows. The 5 of them looked down from the sky. Outside the city, there were vendors selling their wares. Carriages and horses came and went, and merchants shouted. In the east and south, there were 2 large ponds called the Pond of Benefit and the Pond of Virtue. In the water, there were 2 golden city dragon boats that protected the country. They were 6,000 feet long and covered with 12 floors of pavilions. On each floor, there were altars with jade tables and offering tables. Incense was burning in spirals and the air was like steam, forming into clouds. Although they could see the situation outside the city, there was a thin layer of fog covering the city. Even if they used their eyesight, they still couldn't see the situation inside. Song Chuyuan pointed there and said, "That is the heaven locking restriction formation. If we fly over, we will definitely be stopped. We need to get the genealogy to pass." When Zhang Boyan came last time, he only went to the celestial city and didn't go to the human state city. He took a few glances and saw that the restriction was crude and couldn't be compared to Hanyuan Mountain Gates formation. With their cultivation, it wasn't impossible for them to break through. He couldn't help but sneer. It's just a restriction formation, it can only stop ordinary people. It won't affect us. Zhang Yan said, Zhongtai is the host and we are the guests. We don't need to rely on force. Daoist Song, how do we get the genealogy? Song Chuyuan bowed and replied, Zhongtai sect has a Dao palace outside the state city. We can go there to get the genealogy. The lame Daoist swept his gaze around and pointed at a boundary. That's it. Zhang Yan turned to look and saw that the direction he was pointing at was a mountain ridge that looked like a brush rack 100 miles away from the mountain ridge. There was a temple on top of it and smoke was rising from the roof tiles. The wind could not disperse it and the smoke rose straight into the sky. It was obvious that it was the work of a cultivator. There were more than 10 Mao Ci village at the foot of the mountain and there was a stream surrounding it. There was a very flat road at the entrance of the village and there was a small pond by the side. There was a huge rock that was half the height of a person. However, after taking a few more glances, he noticed that there were rays of spiritual light coming out from the rock. Zhang Yan felt that something was wrong and floated over there. After landing, he took a closer look and smiled at the people behind him. Can the three Taoists see anything? A ray of light shot out from Song Chuyuan's eyes and after a while, he said with certainty, this rock is formed from an ancient tree that is billions of years old. There is a stone core inside and it will break out of its shell in at most 10 years. If it's lucky, it can use the human chi here to take the form of a human. The lame Taoist shook his head and said, it's rare for a stone to turn into a spirit. It won't take more than 10 years. But I dare to say that it will meet its doom before it can break out of its shell. As soon as he said that, the rock seemed to move and let out a whimpering sound. There was also water that looked like tears flowing out from the cracks of the rock. The few of them didn't have any expression on their faces. They could tell that the spirit in the rock felt sad and self-pitying. Zhao Yang couldn't help but say, Sect Master, since we are passing by this place, we are fated. Why don't you help it? Zhang Yan muttered to himself and took out a form transformation pill. He flicked his finger and sent it into Zhao Yang's hand. He said with a smile, this pill can help it transform. However, if you help it, you will take on the karma of this stone spirit. Zhao Yang didn't care at all. He turned the pill into a wisp of clear air and used his mana to slap it into the rock. Zhang Boyan didn't say anything and let his disciple do what he wanted. After a while, the big rock suddenly shook and a crack appeared. A ray of light shot out from it and a girl in white with almond-shaped eyes and rosy cheeks walked out. She bowed to Zhao Yang and said timidly, I'm Qiao Ying, thank you for enlightening me, Celestial Master. I'm willing to use this body to serve you and repay your kindness. Zhao Yang looked at her up and down and said with a smile, coincidentally, my master needs someone to serve him, so I'll choose you. Zhang Boyan snorted and said coldly, I don't need anyone to serve me. Zhao Yang smiled and said, since master doesn't accept you, then you can only be my disciple. The girl in white said in fear, I don't dare. She looked at Zhang Boyan with some fear and lowered her head to stand behind Zhao Yang, looking obedient. At this moment, a farmer happened to pass by and saw them surrounding the rock. He was stunned at first. After hesitating for a while, he came forward cautiously and said, Immortal Masters, are you interested in this rock? Zhao Yang looked at him and said, so what if I am? So what if I'm not? The farmer shrunk his neck. He stammered, no, nothing. It's just that the stone steps in front of the Taoist temple on the mountain are missing a corner. I ordered me to fix it. I remembered that there was an ownerless big rock at the entrance of the village, so I wanted to use it. The girl in white couldn't help but cover her mouth with her sleeves and let out a low cry of surprise. If Zhang Yan and the others came a step later, she would have suffered a disaster. Although she had already shed her shell, this rock was where she originally resided, so she couldn't give it up easily. Zhao Yang understood the reason behind it. Since he had already made his move, he was determined to be a good person to the end. He waved his hand and said, I've already taken a liking to this rock, you can change to another one. The farmer didn't dare to compete with him and quickly said, since the immortal masters have taken a liking to it, just take it, just take it. He looked at them carefully and said fawningly, Immortal masters, since you are passing by, would you like to have some tea in the village? The water is from the well in the Taoist temple. Other than the immortal masters who come here, no one in the village would drink it. Zhao Yang laughed and said, "Who are you trying to fool? The children in the village just pee and throw stones, how would we know?" The farmer was shocked and hurriedly knelt down. He said with a sad face, "Master Taoist, the well watchers usually take care of it. I'm telling the truth, I wouldn't dare to lie to you." Zhao Yang said it casually, but seeing that the farmer was trembling, he didn't want to mess with him anymore. He said, "I don't need you to bring any tea, just go to the Taoist temple and call the deacon here." The farmer quickly got up and left in a panic as if he was running for his life. After a while, a ray of light shone from the mountain and a middle-aged Taoist came down. He was wearing a bright Taoist robe and his hair and beard were meticulously combed. They were black and tidy. It was obvious that they were similar to the elders in the sect, especially the young Taoist among them. His breath was as deep as the ocean, which meant that he wasn't a simple person. He hurried over and said respectfully, "I'm Lu Xian, the General Affairs Officer of Alchemy Mountain Taoist Palace. May I know where you are from? What can I do for you?" Zhao Yang stepped forward and said, "I'm going to the Dragon Pillar Conclave with a few masters and passed by here. I'm here to ask for a pass certificate." The Taoist temple in Chu was built by Zhong Tai. Since this Taoist was also a disciple of his sect, he didn't avoid the topic and told them the reason for his visit. The Taoist became even more respectful upon hearing that. He said, "So it's the few of you who are rushing to the Dragon Pillar Dharma assembly. There are a few large-winged eagles that our sect has reared in our palace. If you ride on these spiritual birds, they can escort you into Daong City without the need of a genealogy certificate. It's just that taming them usually costs a lot." This. Zhang Yan smiled and waved his sleeve, tossing a jade bottle to the Taoist. The Taoist nimbly caught it, opened the bottle cap, and smelled it. He couldn't help but be overjoyed and carefully put it away in his bosom. Then he took out a bamboo whistle and blew it a few times. 5 black-winged eagles appeared in the distant sky, and after circling in a circle, they flapped their wings and landed in front of the 5 people. These eagles were as tall as a human. Their feathers were like ink and their beaks were like hooks. They looked majestic and extraordinary. Zhao Yang liked them and went up to grab them by the neck. The eagle didn't resist and lowered its head obediently. Zhao Yang flipped over and sat on it. Zhang Yan looked at the eagles and suddenly smiled. He pointed and the eagle in front of him turned into a wooden token and flew back into his sleeve. The Taoist was shocked when he saw this. Zhang Boyun, Song Chuyuan, and the lame Taoist all pointed with their fingers, and the large eagle in front of them also transformed into a wooden tablet. Zhao Yang was shocked and said, "Sect Master, this is..." Zhang Yan smiled and said, "This is just a small technique to activate the soul essence. This wooden token is the pass certificate. Zhao Yang, your cultivation isn't high enough. It's better for you to ride the eagles." As soon as he finished speaking, a streak of light appeared around him, and in a flash, he rose from the ground and streaked across the sky. The 3 nascent soul cultivators behind him also released streaks of light and followed after him. Chapter 673. With the credential, Zhang Yan and the rest flew across the sky without any obstructions and soon arrived at the sky above Daong City. There was a ceremonial officer on duty at the watchtower in the city and he immediately sensed something and sent a red-robed deacon to the sky. After asking about the situation, he smiled and said, "So you are rushing to the Dragon Pillar meeting. The sect has already prepared a funeral hall, please follow me." Zhang Yan and the rest had no objections and let him lead the way. The capital of Chu, Daong, was backed by Hope Mountain, the gate of Zhongtai sect. There were 3,000 towers and 800 pavilions in the city. It was the hour of the evening and the afterglow of the setting sun shone brightly. Under the illumination of the colorful clouds, the eaves were bright and the palaces and lakes were sparkling. It was a magnificent sight. The deacon pointed to the peak and said, "Please look over there. This is our sect's treasure, the 5-elephant white incense tripod." Zhang Yan looked in the direction he pointed and saw a giant tripod on the top of the mountain. It looked like a pair of white elephants holding each other's back. Just now, because of the thick smoke, they could not see the inside of the city. But now they could see it clearly. The ceremonial officer said proudly, "With this tripod guarding the mountain gate, the sect's fortune will not decline." The lame Taoist said, "Zhenren, this is one of the two treasures left by the founders of Zhongtai and Xianyu sections. Zhongtai sect got this white tripod and Xianyu sect got the triple mountain sun tablet. The white tripod can protect the sect's fortune. The jade tablet is also known as the heavenly ceremonial tablet. With this treasure, the weather within 10,000 miles will be favorable and the weather will be like spring. You can also summon the wind and rain and release thunder." Zhao Yang asked curiously, "Forget about the triple mountain sun tablet. Can the 5-elephant white incense tripod really protect the sect's fortune?" The lame Taoist smiled and said, "It is not so easy to obtain the fortune of eternal prosperity. This tripod will kill hundreds of strange beasts every day during spring and autumn. One less beast means one less fortune." Zhao Yang could not help but take a few more glances and thought to himself, "If only my father had this tripod in his sect. The Fu Yang sect would not have declined either." Everyone followed the ceremonial officer for a while, only to discover that they were not heading towards the city, but towards a small mountain southeast of Caesar. Song Chuyuan said in surprise, "Isn't the funeral home in the city?" The lame Taoist shook his head and said, "Those who came for the gathering of the dragon pillars have some cultivation. If I was the sect master of Zhongtai, I wouldn't dare to let these people stay in the city. It would be more reasonable to settle them outside the city." There were many temples and courtyards built on the mountain. They were arranged in a picturesque manner according to the terrain of the mountain. Many of the halls were already lit up with candles, and the entire mountain was filled with specks of light, as if the stars had gathered in the sky. When one got closer, one could even faintly hear the sound of drums and music. Other than that, there were still quite a number of spiritual lights, and one or two of them rushed to the sky. This was deliberately done by the Yuanying Zhenren in the courtyard to show off his cultivation. The lame Taoist counted and found that there were more than 20 of them. The deacon arranged for the 5 of them to stay in a funeral home at the foot of the mountain. It was a quiet and elegant courtyard that occupied an area of 100 acres. There were more than 100 servants at his beck and call, and the pill furnace and weapon room were all available. There were also 30 to 40 female courtesans who were good at music and dance for their entertainment. Zhao Yang walked around and suddenly asked, "I see that the temple on the mountain is even more unique and spacious than here. It's also much more spacious than this place. Why don't you bring us there to stay?" The deacon bowed and said, "Please forgive us. The Zhenren who lives halfway up the mountain has already arrived here a few months ago. As for those on the mountain peak, they are from the 3 sects in the south. All of them are famous cultivators. Even I am not allowed to take a step in without any reason." Zhao Yang said unhappily, "But when I looked at it, there are clearly quite a number of empty courtyards on the mountain. Why don't you bring us there?" The deacon said, "Those have been arranged long ago." Zhang Yan didn't care much about where to stay. He was at ease even facing the cold moon and blue stone. He smiled and said, "This place is fine." Only then did Zhao Yang stop talking. The deacon heaved a sigh of relief and said, "If you have anything, please feel free to tell the steward in the courtyard. I will take my leave." After the person left, Zhang Yan and the other 3 went to meditate. After 2 hours, the steward outside suddenly came to report that the country's ceremonial officer had arrived. As a junior, Zhao Yang naturally had to deal with these trivial matters. He came to the hall and saw 4 people waiting there. The leader had a beautiful beard and wore a red robe with a green python belt around his waist. There were also some traces of qi cultivation on his body. At this moment, he was standing there with his hands behind his back, looking arrogant. When he saw Zhao Yang coming out, he asked, "Where did you come from?" "There was no need to hide this," Zhao Yang said, "from the House of God." "House of God Mountain? Where is that?" The ceremonial officer frowned and took out a gift list from his sleeve and threw it over. Zhao Yang took it and glanced at it. There were many spiritual medicines and rare treasures written on the list, some of which he was familiar with, some of which he had never heard of. He couldn't help but be puzzled. What is the meaning of this? The ceremonial officer sneered and gestured to an attendant beside him. You say it and let him know. The attendant said arrogantly, listen carefully, in a month's time, the headmaster will hold a banquet for guests. When the time comes, if your master needs anything, you just say it according to this gift list. Zhao Yang was puzzled and said, this is not what we are asking for. The ceremonial officer sneered and said, you really don't understand, or are you pretending not to understand? When going into battle, you have to pay attention to the earlier and the later. However, this matter is arranged by our sect's elder one. If you ask for it according to this gift list, we will arrange a good time for you to go up. In this way, you can avoid danger and also get benefits. Why not? However, we are not doing this for nothing. You will need to take 70% of the items in this gift list. The remaining 30% will be yours. This is already quite a lot. You should be content. He paused for a moment and then said, I will be in East Arrival Garden. If you have thought it through, come find me. As he finished speaking, he didn't wait for Zhao Yang to reply. With a wave of his hand, he turned around and left with his attendant. After going out, the attendant suddenly slapped the back of his head, as if remembering something, and said, Old master, I seem to have heard of that House of God mountain somewhere before? The ceremonial officer sneered and said, which cultivator in the East Victory continent has a name that I, your old master, don't not know? As for those who are in cahoots with our Zhongtai sect's elders, I have already informed them. You see, these people are only staying at the foot of the mountain. You can tell that they don't have any background. If they are unwilling, report to Elder Wen and they will suffer. After the ceremonial officer left, Zhao Yang didn't get angry. He only felt that it was a little funny. He thought for a moment and decided not to disturb the teachers. He stuffed the gift list into their hands and went back to practice his daily homework. On the second day, Zhao Yang explained the matter. Zhang Boyan slightly narrowed his eyes. He took out a jade token and said, take this and make a trip to the sixth prince. No matter if there are any results, come back and report to me. Zhao Yang did as he was told. When it was noon, he turned around and said, Master, this disciple has found out that there was a rebellion in the Chu imperial palace last month. Several princes were implicated, and the sixth prince was also imprisoned for his crimes. In Dayang City, Lady Lian was sitting in the Dan room. She breathed out wisps of Dan Sha from her mouth and nose, mixing with the smoke in the room. After about half an hour, her cultivation reached perfection and she slowly collected her qi. Since the death of her two sworn brothers, she lost her biggest external support. Therefore, she lived in seclusion and rarely went out. She only worked hard to practice Xian Qi. She didn't expect that there would be a rebellion in the imperial palace. Several concubines and maids who she didn't get along with were executed. She, on the other hand, was able to avoid trouble because she cultivated in seclusion. Instead, she escaped a calamity. Recently, she even showed signs of breaking through. It could be said that she gained something from a disaster. She picked up a jade scroll in front of her and read it with rapt attention. She thought to herself, the technique second uncle sent is indeed mysterious. I've only practiced it for a few days and I've made great progress. If I become Yuanying, Master will definitely look at me seriously and won't ignore me like before. However, there are a few spiritual medicines at the back of this technique that aren't easy to obtain. That's right, for this battle, Master has almost emptied the treasury. Why don't we think of a solution there? While she was deep in thought, there was a light knock on the door from outside. A voice said, Wife, Elder Yu is here. He says he has something important to discuss with you. Lian Nyangzi snorted. Ever since her two sworn brothers passed away, this Jinren Yu no longer visited. She didn't know why he was here today. However, this person was Yuanying Jinren after all and was once on good terms with her, so she couldn't offend him. Maybe the matter she was thinking about just now could fall on this person. After she made up her mind, she said, invite him to the hall for a while. After tidying herself up in front of the mirror, Lian Nyangzi wrapped herself in a large cloak and came to the main hall. However, when she got there, she discovered that other than Elder Yu, there was another person sitting there. This person had a scholarly appearance and a thin beard that reached his chest. He nodded and smiled at her. When Lien Nyangzi saw this person, she couldn't help but be shocked. She took a few steps back and said, "Chu Changji? Why are you here?" She tilted her head and looked at Elder Yu angrily. Chu Changji had long been expelled from the family by Hui Xian elder ancestor. She didn't expect him to appear here. If this got out, the matter could be big or small. Chu Changji said unhurriedly, "Lien Nyangzi, why are you so alarmed? If it wasn't for elder ancestors' favor, how could I be able to walk around the boundaries of Zhongtai?" Lien Nyangzi still didn't let down her guard and asked, "Is spiritual master Chu all right?" Chu Changji snorted and said, "Even the sect master allowed that heretical sect's demon cultivator to come to the tournament. Why can't I come back?" Lien Nyangzi felt slightly relieved and carefully sat down on the main seat. She asked with a frown, "Elder Chu, what business do you have with this lowly one?" Chu Changji smiled deeply and said, "Nothing else. I just came to tell Lien Nyangzi that Taoist Zhang of Shenwu Mountain has arrived at Daong City and is also here for the Dragon Pillar gathering." Lien Nyangzi said expressionlessly, "What does Taoist Zhang of Shenwu Mountain have to do with this lowly one?" At this moment, Elder Yu laughed and said, "Lien Nyangzi, Elder Chu came with sincerity. There's no need to hide it from him. Back then, that Taoist Zhang made Lien Nyangzi lose face. Don't Lien Nyangzi want to get back at him?" Lien Nyangzi knew she couldn't hide it and glared fiercely at Elder Yu. After thinking for a while, she shook her head and said, "I'll have to disappoint Elder Chu. It's fine if this lowly one's two sworn brothers are here, but this lowly one is already a fallen phoenix. I'm afraid there's nothing I can do." Chu Changji smiled and said, "Don't worry, Lien Nyangzi. Since this person is here for the gathering, then there's something to be done. As long as we make some arrangements, there's no need for you or me to do anything. We can make sure he doesn't return." Chapter 674. After another 20 days, a dozen or so Yuanying Zenrins came to the residence in the garden. Because Zhang Yan's group had 4 Yuanying cultivators, they attracted a lot of attention. Since they lived next to each other, many people came to make friends with them. Literature Hall. One of them was called Qin Shogu. He had once met the lame Taoist from afar. He was humorous and liked to make friends with people of the same Tao. He often came to visit them, and gradually he became familiar with the 4 of them. On this day, the lame Taoist and Qin Shogu were playing chess while Song Chuyuan watched from the side. Just as they were engrossed in the game, the 3 of them sensed something and turned to look. They saw a ray of light flying over and landing in a courtyard at the foot of the mountain. Song Chuyuan took a look and sighed. "Another person has come. I believe that on the day of the banquet, there should be no less than 30 or 40 people. When I travel, it's rare to even meet a nascent soul cultivator. I didn't expect to meet so many people of the same generation here today." Chen Shogu put down the chess piece and smiled. "I've asked around these few days. These people are the masters of the small sects under the jurisdiction of the 3 southern sections. They aren't nameless people, and those who came before us have deep connections with Zhongtai. Together with those rogue cultivators, it's not surprising that there are so many people here. This Dragon Pillar assembly has affected the hearts of all the cultivators in the world." The lame Taoist pondered for a while and put down the chess piece. He raised his head and asked, "I heard that the 8 Dragon Pillars are the 8 palaces left behind by an ancient deity. But I don't think it's that simple. Does Brother Qin know what they are fighting for?" The Dragon Pillar had already been erected on the Dongxing continent tens of thousands of years ago, and the 2 sects had been fighting for this object for the past hundreds of years. Even after suffering heavy casualties, they were unwilling to give up. He vaguely felt that the matter inside was extremely unusual. Chen Shogu threw the chess piece in his hand and laughed. "Cripple Tang, you didn't mention a word about this a few days ago. I thought you had changed. But you still couldn't hold it in and came to ask me." The lame Taoist smiled bitterly and sighed. "Fellow Taoist Qin has to see me make a fool of myself." Chen Shogu said proudly, "It would be difficult for you to ask someone else about this. It's just that I've heard some rumors." At this time, Song Chuyuan was also interested, revealing an attentive look. Chen Shogu's smile faded a little, and he cupped his hands towards the two of them, apologizing first. This little brother only heard about this matter from the grapevine. Just take it as an anecdote and don't take it seriously. The lame Taoist pretended to be angry and slammed the table. Don't keep me guessing, tell me quickly. Chen Shogu cupped his hands again and said, I have to talk about the Xianyue and Zhongtai sects first. These two sects originated from the same source. Before the founding ancestor ascended, he split his sect's orthodoxy into two and passed it down to one disciple each. Zhongtai passed down the compendium's secret record while Xianyu passed down the three Guanghui important technique. The cultivation techniques of the two sects had their own merits, but they were originally of the same lineage and could be said to be equally matched. But until now, none of them had the cultivation of that founding ancestor. Thus, both sects wanted to combine the two techniques, and for this reason, they fought endlessly. For these hundreds of years. Rumor has it that what that founding ancestor learned came from that dragon pillar. The lame Taoist said unhappily, You're talking about this. I've heard a little about it. Chen Shogu leisurely waved his hands. Don't be anxious, there's more. He looked outside and lowered his voice. I heard that both sects used up the opportunities of their predecessors. Zhongtai Zhenren Zheng and Xianyu Zhenren He's lifespans are also gradually declining. If no one has the opportunity to see the grotto heaven before reincarnation, they will be eaten by other sects like the three evil sections. If they retreat, they will die, but if they advance, they might have a way out. Thus, they had to risk their lives. When Song Yuanchu heard this, he was 80% convinced. Didn't the corpse cult fall like this? Thinking that Zhongtai and Xianyu would end up like this, he felt a surge of joy in his heart. The lame Taoist, however, did not believe it. Let's not talk about Xianyu. Zhongtai has the 5 symbols white incense cauldron to hold down the fate energy. How could there be such a mistake? Chen Shogu's tone was slightly sarcastic. Fate energy? If it's really useful, why would it end up like this? I think that something unforeseen must have happened. The lame Taoist and Song Yuanchu looked at each other, feeling that what he said made sense. Chen Shogu suddenly smiled and waved his sleeves. No matter what, it doesn't have much to do with us. Let's not talk about this. I've been here for a few days. Why didn't I see Sect Master Zhang? Song Yuanchu said vaguely, after the banquet, it will be the Dragon Pillar battle, so Sect Master Zhang has been cultivating in seclusion these few days. Chen Shogu smiled. We don't have any foundation, we're just going up for a walk to boost our reputation, there's no need to be so attentive. At this point, he suddenly shut up and looked at the two of them in surprise. Could it be that Sect Master Zhang did not agree to the ceremony officer's request? The lame Taoist did not speak, but Song Yuanchu snorted, What's wrong with not agreeing to such a rude request? Chen Shogu exclaimed, looking at the two of them with a complicated expression, then sighed. In the recent few battles, Zhongtai has lost all of them. Do you two know the reason? Regarding the internal situation of the battle, both sects were tight-lipped and kept it a secret, so outsiders could not know. The lame Taoist cupped his hands. Taoist Chen has a wide circle of friends. What can be hidden from others might not be hidden from you. Chen Shogu pointed at the lame Taoist and shook his head. Cripple Tang, you're belittling me again. Others might not know the background of a broken Taoist like me, but do you? He paused, stroked his beard, and said, The successive defeats of Zhongtai were due to a person taught by Xianyu. His name is Rong Juanzhong. He has cultivated for 600 years and has reached the 3rd level of the nascent soul realm. Not to mention that he has cultivated the 3 Guanghui essentials to the point of perfection, he has also refined a magic weapon that he can use. He is the #1 person in the sect below the heavenly abode. In the first 2 battles, he killed more than 10 cultivators of Zhongtai. Even if he was surrounded by everyone, he was not afraid. Even sect leader Qiao of Zhongtai couldn't do anything to him, so he thought of recruiting someone else. The lame Taoist frowned. The gathering of dragon pillars did not limit the number of people, it would only end with one side completely losing. The sect master of Zhongtai had lost twice. The loss of the cultivators in the sect was too great, so he decided to recruit outsiders. But he would not allow outsiders to take advantage of them. Everyone who came here had to sign a contract, stating that they could not return if they did not win. If they did not meet a powerful person, their life would be in danger. Although he knew that Zhang Yan was not weak, his cultivation was after all only at the second level of yuanying. If he met Rong Juanzhong, he might not be a match for him. Chen Shogu saw that the two of them did not speak, so he kindly said, "It is not easy for us to cultivate, you two should persuade Jinren Zhang. Although the rewards for this gathering of dragon pillars are generous, the danger is not small. Why don't you just follow the order of the ceremonial officer, at least you can be at ease." After that, he stood up, cupped his hands at the two of them, and turned to leave. The hall fell into silence. Song Chuyuan was a little absent-minded. He did not know if Zhang Yan would send him to fight. If he met Rong Juanzhong, he knew that he would definitely die, so he thought for a while and said in a deep voice, "It will be the Zhong Tai feast in a few days. We need to inform Jinren Zhang about this, so he can be prepared." The lame Taoist was calm. He looked over and asked seriously, "Brother Song, if sect Master Zhang goes up against Rong Juanzhong, what do you think his chances of winning are?" Song Chuyuan thought for a while, then shook his head and said, "It's hard to say. I still can't see through Jinren Zhang, but that Rong Juanzhong." This answer was ambiguous, but the lame Taoist seemed to be in deep thought. Song Chuyuan raised his head and said, "Brother Tang always has ideas. Do you have a plan to solve this problem?" He asked casually, but he did not expect the lame Taoist to nod and say, "It's not that I don't have a plan." Song Chuyuan's expression brightened, and he said with hope, "Tell me quickly." The lame Taoist said with a faint smile, "I heard that Xianyu sect wants to fight Zhong Tai and is also recruiting talents from all over. Why do we have to cling to Zhong Tai and not let go? Why don't we go to Xianyu?" Song Chuyuan couldn't help but stare blankly. Only after a long while did he react and say, but. He stammered for a long time, but couldn't say the reason. In the end, he choked out a sentence. "How could Xianyu cult tolerate us?" The lame Taoist glanced at him and said, "With the spell contract as proof, why not? We came here first because of the Sixth Prince's repeated expressions of goodwill. Now that he is in prison, we have nothing to do with him. Moreover, although Jinren Zhang is in charge of the Divine House for Celestial City, he has nothing to do with Zhong Tai. Now that Xianyu sect is powerful, it is more beneficial to go to him." Song Chuyuan thought about it and retorted, "Since Xianyu sect is powerful, we won't even be the icing on the cake if we go. What's the use of going?" The lame Taoist smiled and shook his head. "If Zhong Tai only relies on the cultivators he recruited, he won't be able to win this battle. The people he invited are only used to wear down Xianyu's strength. He should have a backup plan. If I'm not wrong, this battle will be even more desperate than the previous two, so there is no need to worry about not having a chance to go." Although Zhong Tai also recruited cultivators from other sects, they were not of the same mind. This battle involved the fight for the dragon pillar that had been going on for hundreds of years, so he must have his own plans. He would not put all his hopes on outsiders. Hearing this, Song Chuyuan was silent for a while, then said, "Taoist brother's words are somewhat reasonable. Why don't we go and talk to Jinren?" Before he finished, the lame Taoist quickly waved his hand and smiled. "I just now little brother has joined the sect, so it is not convenient for me to talk. However, Taoist brother is fine." Song Chuyuan immediately stood up and nodded. "Okay, I will go and report to Jinren now." He left the hall and hurried to the rear courtyard. There was a bamboo building here, which was where Zhang Yan was cultivating in seclusion. After sending a message from outside, he was summoned inside. After greeting Zhang Yan, he hurriedly reported the details of the situation. Zhang Yan's eyes flickered slightly when he heard this. Logically speaking, the lame Taoist suggestion was indeed a good idea. However, why did he rush to the Dragon Pillar meeting? The 3 spiritual herbs, especially the snake jewel, he already knew that Zhong Tai sect had a lot of them. Even if Xianyu sect had them, they might not have as many. He thought to himself, "Ever since I came to Dongsheng continent, I have not met a proper opponent. They are all far from the people I met during the 16 sects sword battles. Since this Rong Juanzhong is so powerful, being able to fight with him is exactly what I want. If I can win, then I will be able to ask for spiritual herbs as compensation. Chapter 675. 3 days later, on the second day of the second month. Hope Sound Mountain was filled with auspicious clouds and golden flowers. More than 1,000 female attendants in colorful clothes and ceremonial officers were waiting for the guests in front of the temple. The restriction that used to cover the mountain was long gone. In the misty mist, there stood a huge platform that was thousands of meters tall. It shone with a brilliant golden light. This platform was called the Golden Bell. It was the place where the founders of the sect gathered for a banquet. This was the origin of the name of the Golden Bell sect. Ever since the second-generation sect leader took charge of the sect, he dug a lake under the platform and called it the Nourishing Liquid Lake. It was very large, and in the middle of the lake stones were piled up into 3 high mountains. They were called the Welcoming Sun Mountain, the Joyous Carp Mountain, and the Auspicious Lake. The 3 mountains surrounded the Golden Bell platform in a state of worship and were connected by jade bridges. This created the atmosphere of the Golden Bell platform. Golden Mountain moistens water, white cauldron overlooking the mountains. Zhang Yan and his group of 5 arrived on a flying boat. When they looked down, they saw the green lake, the copper halls, the pavilions, and the water bridges. It was a beautiful scene. The lame Taoist looked down and sighed. Just by looking at this scene, who would have thought that Zhongtai sect has suffered a great loss and is no longer what it used to be? Song Chuyuan did not have a good impression of Zhongtai sect. He snorted and sneered, "It's just the last radiance of a setting sun." A white light flashed below and a disciple of Zhongtai sect came up. He cupped his hands and said, "May I ask where you are from?" Zhao Yang took out the invitation from his bosom. The disciple looked at it and said respectfully, "So it's sect Master Zhang from the Divine House. Please follow me." Those who came to the banquet and were qualified to sit in the Golden Bell platform were all Yuanying experts. Many of the lower disciples could only go to the 3 mountains to enjoy the banquet. However, this disciple saw that there was only Zhao Yang beside Zhang Yan and did not say anything. Most of the disciples of Zhongtai sect were relatives of the Chu emperor. They were very respectful. Even if they were to enter the pavilion, they would be seated according to their status. Between the 3 halls, separated by 36 jade steps, only those who were on good terms with the Zhongtai sect and had outstanding strength were allowed to enter the upper hall. To Zhongtai, right now Zhang Yan's name was not well known, but because his cultivation base was profound and he was also the leader of a sect, 4 of the 5 were Yuanying cultivators, although they did not come from any famous mountain cave. The disciple didn't dare to invite him to the lower hall, so he invited him to sit in the middle hall. After taking his seat, Zhang Yan looked around and saw that the hall was extremely spacious, and his vision was unobstructed. It was a panoramic view. Sitting here, one could see the pear blossoms falling from the distant mountains, the fluttering jade rain, and the peach blossom forest. It was a scene that was too beautiful to behold. He shifted his gaze again. Looking at the banquet, he was the only one who had reached the second stage of Yuanying. In the upper hall. On the other hand, there were 2 or 3 people with similar cultivation to him, but none of them were at the 3rd level of Yuanying. In reality, in the Dongsheng continent, other than the disciples of the big sects, there were only 2 or 3 people with similar cultivation. It was not easy to cultivate to the Yuanying realm. Many cultivators who entered this realm already had a long lifespan. If they went any higher, they would just increase their cultivation base a little. Without a huge opportunity, they would never be able to peek into the secrets of the heavenly grotto. They would only be able to enjoy the pleasures of life with a clear conscience, and no longer have the heart to advance. When his gaze passed by, the 2 people sitting near him also looked over. Seeing that his cultivation base was profound, their expressions couldn't help but change slightly. They hurriedly moved to the side and cupped their hands to greet him. Zhang Yan smiled and also raised his hands to greet him. At this moment, he suddenly thought of something and asked Song Yuanchu, who was sitting beside him, "Is there anyone from the same sect here?" Song Chuyuan took a few glances and said in a small voice, "There are 2, but they are enemies." He secretly pointed to a place and said, "It's those 2." Zhang Yan looked over and saw that 100 feet away from him, there were two strangely dressed Taoists sitting. One had a grizzled beard, red skin, delicate like a baby, and had an aura of transcendence. The other had a withered face, eyebrows drooping to his cheeks, a flat mouth, and a collapsed nose. His appearance was ugly. Song Chuyuan's voice carried a bit of hatred as he said, "The white-haired one is called Yang Fengshao. He was originally an elder in the sect. The one who looks slightly younger is called Gu Hongtang. He is from the same sect. When our sect was besieged by the three sects, these two didn't care about the sect's difficulties at all and escaped first. Later on, when our sect came to ask for help, they even turned hostile. My master was also plotted against by these two." Zhang Yan nodded and said, "If Taoists can't find the person who passed down the secret tome in a short time, there's no need to be anxious." Back then, Song Chuyuan was willing to rely on Zhang Yan only because he wanted to be able to pass down the sect's secret technique to his fellow sect members one day and avoid losing his Tao tradition. However, at that time, he only made the agreement 16 years because he was extremely afraid that Zhang Yan would take his life. At this moment, he hesitated for a moment, then suddenly bowed and said, "If Taoist Zhang doesn't mind, this lowly one is willing to serve Taoist Zhang for the rest of his life." Zhang Yan wasn't surprised at all. He smiled and nodded. "Taoist Zhang's disposition is pure and good. Since you're willing to enter my sect, I can't ask for more." When Song Chuyuan heard these words, he only felt his heart lighten, as if the shackles that had been shackling him for many days had been removed. He solemnly bowed again and returned to his seat. Then he picked up his wine cup and toasted, tilting his head back and drinking. Zhang Yan smiled and also picked up his wine cup, drinking a mouthful. When he put it down, he heard whispers coming from the seats next to him. His expression changed, and he channeled his energy to his ears. He heard someone say, "According to Chu's etiquette, a banquet with friends, a banquet with delicacies. This time, Zhongtai sect master is hosting a banquet and not a banquet. It's enough to see that this is a test." Another person continued, "After the previous two dragon pillars, more than half of the elders in Zhongtai sect died. At that time, there was a rumor that sect master Qiao wanted to invite an outsider to become an elder. If the rumor is true, later on at the banquet, us Marshall brothers will have to show off our skills." The first person shushed them and said in a low voice, "This is the territory of Zhongtai sect. Who knows how many experts are watching us from the side? You and I should know this in our hearts. Don't mention it again, in case we offend someone for no reason and don't know it." The other person understood and hurriedly said, Yes, I was careless." After that, the two of them talked about daily trifles. Zhang Yan shook his head and smiled, not in the mood to listen. After waiting for about an hour, the guests in the hall had all arrived. At this time, a bell suddenly rang. First, a pleasure boat came out, and out flew 100 or so female concubines. Colorful flower petals filled the sky. Then, a cloud of light came down from the sky, but it couldn't be seen from where it came from, as if it came from beyond the heavens. Another sound was heard, and the light dispersed. A black-haired Taoist walked out with a rui in his hand. When the disciples and elders of Zhongtai sect saw this, they all bowed and said, "Greetings to sect Master Jinren." To show their respect, everyone also stood up from their seats and bowed. Sect Master Qiao of Zhongtai sect had a pair of slender phoenix eyes, a prominent nose and red lips. His beard was long to his abdomen, and he had a dignified appearance. He wore a 10,000 purple star crown on his head, and wore a beautiful mountain and river robe. On top of his head, there were 3 big clouds that moved with spiritual light, and there was a sign of them becoming one. He laughed heartily and said, "I'm late. Sorry for the long wait, fellow Taoists." The guests below all said they didn't dare. Sect Master Qiao glanced at a ceremonial official in front of the hall. The latter stood up and was about to speak, but at this moment, suddenly he heard someone say, "Sect Master Qiao, Daoren heard that you're recruiting people with special talents and doesn't care about their background, so I came to seek shelter. However, am not satisfied with the arrangement of us 2 brothers in the lower hall." Zhang Yan turned around and saw that the person who spoke was Daoren with white hair and a youthful face. It was Song Chiyuan's fellow disciple, Yang Fengxiao. Sect Master Qiao had good self-restraint and didn't get angry. He looked down and smiled. It's not that I'm being rude. Everyone here is either highly skilled or famous, but I wonder what you're capable of? Yang Fengxiao turned around. He looked at the people around him and said loudly, Daoren, I've cultivated a special art, and I want to hurt people when I attack. It's not good to use it in this banquet, but there's a decapitation, intestines washing, and heart gouging that can be used. The people below instantly went into an uproar. The bodies of cultivators couldn't be damaged at all. If they were damaged, forget about achieving the great Tao, even their cultivation would be damaged. Not to mention decapitation and heart gouging, even those cultivators of the strength path would die if their bodies were cut off if their cultivation wasn't profound enough. As for the head of the 6 sons, no one had ever heard of being able to survive after being decapitated. Sect Master Qiao, however, was interested and said, Fellow Taoist, you're not joking? Yang Fengxiao smiled proudly and said, Sect Master Qiao, Daoren isn't someone who's lost his mind, he wouldn't dare to joke about something like this. Song Chiyuan's face was full of suspicion. He had never heard of such a special art in the sect, and even the books in the secret cave didn't have any records of it. He thought to himself, could it be that after not seeing him for more than 100 years, he's learned some secret art again? Zhang Yan's eyes flashed. One of the 12 divine arts in Qinsong school, Void Vital Qi, could achieve this, but he didn't know if this person also knew such a divine art. Sect Master Qiao looked left and right, then nodded and said, Then please give it a try, fellow Taoist. If he really has such an ability, why can't I offer him a seat of honor? Yang Fengxiao's eyes lit up, and he immediately loosened the silk sash around his waist before unbuttoning his robe, revealing his chest and abdomen. He touched his neck and patted his stomach, then shouted, Who wants to come forward? Song Chiyuan clenched his fists and was about to step forward to give it a try, but before he could stand up, he heard someone on the stairs say, Can I? Yang Fengxiao looked over and saw that the person had thick lips, thick eyebrows, and a thick mustache. He was abnormally tall and sturdy, looking extremely ferocious. He laughed loudly and said, So it's Elder Xiang. I heard that before Elder Xiang entered the Tao, you were once a valiant general of Chu. Your bravery was the best in the 3 armies. With a blade in your hand, you must be ruthless and merciless. Elder Kong didn't say anything more. He stretched out his hand and grabbed, taking out a thick blade from his sleeve. He walked down the stairs and in 2 or 3 steps he was in front of Yang Fengxiao. Without saying a word, he raised the blade in his hand and with a piu-chi sound, Yang Fengxiao's head fell to the ground. Everyone was watching with their eyes wide open. Seeing this scene, they all felt a chill down their necks. But the strange thing was, although the head was gone, the body didn't fall, and no blood spurted out from the wound. At this moment, a loud laugh came from somewhere in the hall. Everyone looked towards the source of the sound and were shocked. It was Yang Fengxiao's head. The head was originally facing the ground, but at this moment, it turned around and said loudly, Everyone, done, I will temporarily keep this head here. There's no need to hurry to put it back. Elder Kong, please cut open my stomach. Sect leader Qiao laughed and said, There's no need. Fellow Taoist's miraculous art alone has already opened our eyes. Men, go up the hall and give him a seat. Elder Kong was very close, and he could see that this wasn't some kind of illusion art, but a real head being chopped off. He couldn't help but click his tongue in wonder. Yang Fengxiao shouted, Sect leader Qiao, Daoren is coming up now. I'm afraid there are fellow Taoists who won't accept it. Please allow me to finish displaying my skills. As he said this, the headless body trembled and took out a blade from somewhere. He fiercely slashed at his abdomen, and then put his hand inside to feel around, taking out a warm heart. He held it up with one hand and gestured to everyone before putting it back in. With a wipe of his hand, the wound had already disappeared completely. The headless body left the table and walked 2 steps unsteadily. He bent down and grabbed the head, pressing it back on his neck again. He first straightened it, then used his hand to pinch it. The cut was gone, and when he twisted his neck, he actually looked fine. Chapter 676. The lame Taoist was curious when he saw the method of cutting open the abdomen and carving out the heart. He looked at Song Chuyuan and asked, "Fellow Taoist Song, is this the corpse cult's secret technique?" Song Yuanchu was also confused and shook his head. Yang Fengshao doesn't have this ability. The corpse cult doesn't have this kind of technique. Zhang Boyan scoffed. He's a cultivator of the Qi path. There must be a limit to what he can do. I don't believe that he can use it in a fight, so there's no need to pay too much attention to it. When Tang and Song heard this, they both nodded in agreement. This evaluation could be said to have hit the nail on the head. Only cultivators who specialized in strength could have an unbreakable body. For Yang Fengshao to be able to do this, he could only have used some extraordinary methods. After Yang Fengshao sat in the upper hall, he looked left and right, extremely pleased with himself. At this moment, he rolled his eyes and pointed to the bottom of the stairs and said, "Sect leader Qiao, my junior martial brother Gu's ability is also not bad. He is also qualified to sit here." The moment he said this, the elders of Zhongtai were displeased. Although Yang Fengshao wasn't famous back then, there were still people who recognized him and knew his background. In their eyes, he was just a remnant of the evil faction. It was already an honor for the sect leader to be on the same level as them, but he actually wanted another cultivator of the evil faction to sit on the same level. He was asking for a foot after being given an inch. Sect leader Qiao was still smiling. "What ability does fellow Taoist Gu have? Can we have a look?" Yang Fengshao chuckled and walked to the front of the stairs. He shouted down, "Junior brother, tell us about your ability." Gu Hongtang stood up with a proud expression. He said, "Sect leader Qiao, I have a small technique that can revive the dead and regrow flesh and bones." His words were shocking. Just now, when Yang Fengshao spoke, some people might have been moved, but now everyone was in disbelief. Mortals. Once their vitality was exhausted, their souls would dissipate in a few days if there was no special reason. As for their bodies, there was no need to mention it. Even an ascended expert might not be able to do what he said. Sect leader Qiao could tell that Gu Hongtang was deliberately trying to shock them, but it didn't contradict his original intention. Zhongtai was defeated twice, and many cultivators died in battle. Currently, there were very few people suppressing the various immortal cities. He had already sent out all the elders of Hope Voice Mountain, causing the mountain gate to be empty. This situation would definitely not last long, hence, this banquet. He also had the intention of selecting suitable talents. Those who had strange skills but were not good at fighting were exactly the kind of people he wanted to recruit. Gu Hongtang saw the doubt in the crowd and said, "If you don't believe me, I can give it a try." Someone below said, "Where can we find a dead man for you here?" Before Gu Hongtang could say anything, a man with a green scarf wrapped around his head stood up from the seats in the upper hall. A cultivator with a treasured sword at his waist said, "What's so difficult about this? I'll do it. Just find him." He looked down at Gu Hongtang's face and said lightly, "I just don't know if fellow cultivator Gu is willing." Gu Hongtang cupped his hands and said, "So it's Elder Zhong to buy. Elder, you are a person of virtue and prestige. I'm sure there won't be any gossip after this. I'm willing." Elder Bai Daoren agreed. He pinched his fingers and made a hand sign, then he sent out a ray of spiritual light. After a while, a ray of red light flew in from outside the Golden Bell platform. It flew straight into the hall and stopped on the table. Elder Bai waved his sleeve and the red light dispersed. A 7- or 8-year-old child with a ponytail appeared. His eyes were tightly shut, his face was pale, and he had no breath. It was obvious that he had been dead for many days. According to Gu Hongtang's words, he should have found a skeleton. However, today was the Xian banquet, finding bones or a bloody corpse would spoil the mood. Hence, he found a child's corpse that just now had died not long ago in Deyang City. Gu Hongtang glanced at it and was certain in his heart. He dared to say such big words because he was prepared. If the other party found a skeleton, he would use a camouflage technique that he had learned to make sure that no one here would be able to see through it. If it was a corpse, he had thousands of specially refined human souls in his sleeves. From the old to the young, from the male to the female, they had all kinds of personalities. That would make it even more convenient. Right now, he could just go up and perform the technique. However, before he came out, Yang Fengxiao had specifically told him that if it was too easy, then it wouldn't be worth it, and it wouldn't be easy to win people's trust. Hence, he had to act mysterious first. Therefore, he first apologized and slowly took out a few instruments. He laid them out on the table, then chanted incantations and burned incense. After a while, when everyone was getting impatient, he walked up and slapped the child's forehead, saying, "Wake up." The child's body trembled. After a while, he slowly opened his eyes, revealing a blank look. He then sat up, rubbed his eyes, and looked around curiously with a pair of black eyes. He was a mortal, so he could only see a hazy scene on the Golden Bell platform. He couldn't see more than 100 feet away, so he got bored after a while. Suddenly, he saw that there were many fruits and vegetables on the table next to him, and he felt hungry. He swallowed his saliva, grabbed them, and held them in his two small hands, eating happily. Gu Hongtang smiled and said, "It's done." Elder Bai's eyes flashed and he shouted, "Wait." He retracted his spiritual vigor and walked to the child's side. He tried to speak gently and asked, "Child, why are you eating and drinking here? Let me ask you, what's your name and what's your parents' names?" As he said this, he glanced at Gu Hongtang with a sharp gaze. He was the one who found the child, so he naturally knew where he came from. After asking, if it was wrong, it could prove that it was the soul returning technique of borrowing a corpse. It was a fake and not a real resurrection. Even without the permission of the headmaster, he could still chase the child out. However, Gu Hongtang chuckled and brought a wine pot over. He poured himself a cup of wine, tilted his head back, and drank it down without the slightest hint of panic. The child was obviously not from an ordinary family. When he heard an elder's question, he quickly put down the food in his hand and replied with a childish voice, "Uncle, my surname is In, my father is in Jingji, and my mother is in Lin. I don't know why I'm here." Elder Bai was startled and he frowned and thought, "Strange, this actually matches. Could it be that this person really has a supernatural power that can reverse life and death?" He then asked a few more questions, and they were exactly the same as what he knew. It was obvious that it was the original spirit. Gu Hongtang said proudly, "Elder Bai, what do you think? Does my technique impress you?" Elder Bai looked at him deeply and slowly nodded. "You are indeed very capable." He still did not believe that the child could really resurrect the soul, but to be able to make him unable to find any flaws in it, it must be an impressive technique. Not only did he not believe it, but there were not many people present who were easy to fool. They all whispered to each other, trying to guess the secret behind it. Headmaster Qiao smiled. "Fellow Gu, you can come up and take a seat." Gu Hongtang's face lit up, and he bowed, then went up to the stage. After bowing again, he sat down excitedly. With Yang Fengxiao and Gu Hongtang as precedents, many of the cultivators in the hall were also tempted and wanted to show off their skills. At this moment, everyone suddenly felt something and looked up, only to see a fiery meteor dragging a long tail. It was flying over from the sky, and it was extremely bright, and it was flying towards them. The elders on the stage saw this light. They all had different expressions. Some were stupefied, some were happy, and some were frowning. Moments later, this fiery meteor flew close, but it did not retract its momentum. With a rumble, it heavily smashed onto the golden stage, causing the entire stage to tremble. After a short while, the fire dissipated, and a tall and strong young cultivator appeared. This person's face was like powder, and he wore a crown on his head. His back was wide, and he walked with a majestic gait. As he looked around, he gave off a disdainful aura. A glint appeared in Zhang Yan's eyes. With one look, he could tell that although there were no clouds above this person's head, his body was firm, and his aura was vigorous. His breathing carried the sound of thunder, and it was obvious that he walked the path of strength. Moreover, his cultivation was extremely high, and it was comparable to the third grade of Qi Path Yuaning. He thought for a moment and asked, "Do you know who this is?" Song Chuyuan shook his head and said that he did not know. The lame Taoist also frowned and did not speak. On the stage, Headmaster Chiao was extremely happy to see this person, and he smiled. Sun is late. The young cultivator cupped his fists and said, I was sleepy and woke up late. Please forgive me, father. Headmaster Chiao laughed and waved his sleeve. It's fine, it's fine. The lame Taoist's mind flashed, and he said softly, I remember now, this person's name is Du Shishuan, and he is Headmaster Chiao's stepson. I heard that he was sent to another sect to cultivate since he was young, and I didn't expect him to come back now. Du Shishuan looked at everyone present, and he pointed at Yang Fengxiao and Gu Hongtang, saying, Father, where did these two come from? As a stepson, it was very rude to ask directly. However, Headmaster Chiao did not mind, and he told him about their origins. When Du Shishuan heard that, he sneered, Decapitate the head, torture the heart, and revive from the dead? He cupped his fists at Headmaster Chiao and said, Since you have such abilities, father, can you allow me to try? Headmaster Chiao seemed to dote on him, and he immediately nodded and said, Go ahead and try. Du Shishuan walked in front of Yang Fengxiao, and for some reason, he stared at him. The latter felt a sense of fear, but he forced himself to calm down and said, How does young headmaster want to try? A sneer appeared on Du Shishuan's face, and he said, I want to borrow your head. After saying that, he reached out and grabbed Yang Fengxiao's head, and he squeezed it hard. With a crack, the head exploded, and he gently lifted Yang Fengxiao's body up. His other hand climbed up, and he grabbed Yang Fengxiao's ankle. With a split of his arms, he tore Yang Fengxiao's body into two. Just now, when Yang Fengxiao was casting his spell, there was no blood at all, but now, blood was spurting out like a fountain, and there was no more movement. Du Shishuan laughed coldly, and threw the broken body on the ground, and he said in disdain, It's just a small trick of hiding a corpse in a corpse, hiding a worm in a brain, how can you trick me? He was taught by a strange person, and his eyes were refined, and he could see the reality of spiritual vigor. With one look, he could see that Yang Fengxiao was hiding his spirit in the body of a worm, and then living in the brain. His body had long been refined into a corpse tool, and just now, he could do that. Now that his head was crushed by him, his life was gone, and he could not be more dead. He turned around, and his eyes were bursting with divine light, and he stared at Gu Hongtang and said, Don't you have the life and death technique, flesh and bones technique? Come, bring him back to life for me to see. Gu Hongtang was afraid of this person's power, and he could only watch as his senior brother died a violent death, but he did not dare to stop it. Not only that, under the huge pressure, he was so scared that his whole body was trembling, and his lips were trembling, and he could not speak. Du Shishuan showed a hint of disdain, and he sneered, You are not worthy to be my honored guest, get out. He kicked out, and it hit Gu Hongtang's chest. The strength of a cultivator of the path of strength was great, and Gu Hongtang's sternum was immediately crushed. He screamed, and his body flew up from the upper hall, and with a bang, he fell below the golden bell platform. He twitched a few times, and then stopped moving. Chapter 677. Du Shishuan killed 2 Yuanying cultivators on the spot. His actions were so overbearing that everyone's expression changed. A few people nearby were so shocked that they left the table. An elder immediately scolded, Du Shishuan, today the sect leader is holding a banquet with fellow Taoists from all over the world. It's supposed to be a grand event. How could you spill blood on the hall? Dirty the golden platform? Du Shishuan wasn't afraid of the scolding at all. Instead, he laughed and said, Just now, these two are talking about beheading and bringing the dead back to life. I was just giving it a try. They weren't good enough, so who can they blame? Sect leader Chiao frowned slightly and said, Sun, you don't know how to hold back. Du Shishuan's expression was nonchalant as he said, These two actually dared to deceive father and our fellow Taoists. I really can't stand it. A beautiful woman smiled charmingly and tried to smooth things over. Shishuan was just angry in the moment. Sect leader, please don't blame him. Sect leader Chiao nodded and said, I'll forgive you this once. Don't do it again. Du Shishuan bowed and sat on the seat of honor on sect leader Chiao's left side. Seeing that sect leader Qiao had brushed off the matter so easily, the elder from before could only let it go. After returning to his seat, he angrily said to elder Bai beside him, "Sect leader has been too lenient and indulgent towards this child. Junior brother, take a look, does he still care about the elders of the sect?" Elder Bai didn't seem to be surprised and advised, "Sect leader still needs to rely on this kid to deal with Rong Juanzhong during the Dragon Pillar gathering in a few months. How can you punish him?" The elder snorted and said, "I don't believe that without this person, Zhongtai won't be able to defeat Xianyu. There are so many cultivators here, and there must be a few that I can use. After the Dragon Pillar gathering, watch how I deal with him." Elder Bai shook his head. Someone like Rong Juanzhong wasn't someone that could be gotten rid of so easily. Moreover, in order to deal with Zhongtai, Xianyu had also invited many experts to help him. It could be said that the outcome of this battle was uncertain. He sighed slightly and put these thoughts aside for the time being. Looking at the two corpses on the ground, he saw two primordial spirits sneaking out. He wanted to leave, but he didn't dare to. After pondering for a moment, he waved his hand and released two balls of spiritual light. He protected it for the time being and then said, "Do the two of them have anyone from the same sect or a son or nephew who brought the spirit back?" Yang Fengxiao and Gu Hongtang had brought a servant to serve them. However, this servant's cultivation level was low, and he was not one of their disciples. At this moment, when he saw the two of them being beaten to death in the hall, he was already scared out of his wits. Fearing that he would be implicated, how could he dare to open his mouth? Elder Bai asked around, but seeing that no one was responding, he said to the two spirits, "This spirit light of mine is a spirit light. It can protect you for 7 days. Hurry up and reincarnate." The karma involved in sending someone to be reincarnated was extremely great. It was not a master-disciple relationship. Or it might be people with deep connections like relatives and friends of the same sect who would rashly extend their hands. In the future, it might cause a lot of unnecessary trouble. He wasn't related to the two of them, so he naturally wasn't willing to accept it. Yang Fengxiao instantly panicked. Their senior and junior brothers had a lot of enemies, and just the prince alone was a few. It was fine here, but once they left the main hall, the outcome would be very bad. He steeled his heart and shouted at Song Chuyuan with a heart-wrenching voice, "Junior Martial Brother Song, Junior Martial Brother Song, you and I are from the same sect. Could it be that you are willing to see our souls scatter?" Elder Bai was startled, and he couldn't help but turn around and ask, "This fellow cultivator is from the same sect as the two of them?" Song Chuyuan didn't think that the two of them still had the face to find him, and he was extremely furious. However, although they had fallen out long ago, it wasn't good for him to reveal the matters of the sect to others. He took in a deep breath and forcefully nodded his head with a stiff face. Elder Bai observed their expressions and immediately saw that they didn't seem to be on good terms with each other. However, this wasn't related to him. Right now, he only needed to get rid of these two troublesome people. With a wave of his sleeve, he sent the two origin spirits to Song Chuyuan's table. Song Chuyuan suppressed the disgust in his heart and ignored the two people's endless gratitude, putting them into his sleeves. At this moment, Du Shixuan suddenly stared at him. His gaze was like cold lightning, piercing Song Yuanchu's face until it hurt. He couldn't help but be shocked, and his hands slightly slowed down. In a hurry, Yang Fengxiao seemed to say something to him, but he didn't hear it clearly. Du Shixuan said to one of the elders next to him, "I saw that the two of them are from the corpse cult. Could that person also be a fish that escaped the net in the past?" That elder cast a disdainful glance and turned his head to the side, obviously unwilling to pay attention to him. Seeing him like this, Du Shixuan was instantly furious, and it seemed like he was about to explode. Elder Bai knew that Du Shixuan was easily angered, and his actions had always been unscrupulous. He was afraid of making the situation awkward, so he quickly stood up and smoothed things over. "This time, we invited the fellow Taoists of the world to fight against Xianyu together." Sect Master Spiritual Master also said that as long as they are willing to be used by Zhongtai, it doesn't matter where they come from. "Shixuan, why do you need to get to the bottom of this?" Du Shixuan said disdainfully, What can these people do? Even those sitting in the hall are not much better, otherwise, why would we lose again and again? These words cursed everyone at the same time. Whether it was the elders present or the people who came to the banquet, all of their faces were filled with anger. There was even a person who sneered a few times, threw away his wine cup, and flew away from the hall. Sect Master Chiao was also a little displeased, and he said in a deep voice, "Sun, don't speak without thinking." Du Shishun smiled and said, "Father, if you want to know who can come up to the stage, why do you need to go through so much trouble? Let me try, and we will know." After saying that, he activated his divine power, and his eyes shone brightly like fire. He looked at everyone in the hall one by one. When everyone met his gaze, their hearts skipped a beat, and they could not help but avoid him. However, when they passed by Song Yuanchu's table, they saw a young Taoist smiling slightly, and he actually looked at him calmly. The person's eyes were deep, like the deep waters of an abyss, and it was difficult to measure. Du Shishun was shocked. Ever since he cultivated this divine power, it was the first time he saw someone who was not afraid of him. He could not help but stay on him for a while longer. He saw that the spiritual vigor of the person was majestic, and there were 3 clouds gathered above his head. He could not help but raise his eyebrows, and he called for a ceremonial officer, pointed, and said, "Who is that person? He obviously has the cultivation of the 2nd level of Yuaning, but why is he sitting in the middle hall?" The ceremonial officer took a look, then took out the genealogy certificate, and after a check, he knew the result. He bowed and said, "Reporting to Jinren Du, that person's surname is Zhang, and he is the person in charge of the celestial city of Mount Shenwu. Because he is not famous, and he is not a cultivator of the lower sect of Mount Shenwu, we arranged for him to sit in the middle hall." Du Shishun had never heard of the name of the celestial house, and he immediately despised him. He waved his hand and said, "So he is just a rogue cultivator, you may leave." He then cupped his fists at sect leader Chiao. "Father, most of these people can't even withstand the divine light in my eyes, how can they come up to the stage to sit?" Sect leader Chiao nodded and said, "I am right." Seeing this, Elder Bai sighed in his heart and told the ceremonial officer, "Go and tell the musicians to play." The ceremonial officer obeyed, and not long after, the golden bell music was played in the hall. The tune was grand and melodious, and it went out of the hall, spiraling up the mountain, and echoing far and wide. However, because of Du Shishun's interference, the atmosphere of the banquet was dull even though there was singing and dancing to liven things up. He left halfway, and in less than 2 hours, the banquet was over in a hurry. On the way back, the lame Taoist sighed and said, "Just now in the hall, I saw that apart from Elder Bai who has some cultivation, the rest of the people in the hall don't have high cultivation. As one of the 5 great sects of Dongsheng, the Zhongtai sect shouldn't have such a shallow foundation. I think the most powerful cultivators died in the previous 2 battles. No wonder they had no choice but to invite outside cultivators." Song Chuyuan sneered and said, "Du Shishun's actions today have offended everyone who came." The lame Taoist thought about it and said, "I heard that sect leader Chiao was able to sit on the position of sect leader because his Tao companion, Madame Zhao, contributed a lot. I heard that this woman is quite capable, and this Du Shishun is her son. Just now in the hall, I'm afraid he did it on purpose." Song Yuanchu was surprised and said, "Strange, why would he do that?" The lame Taoist shook his head and said, "Outsiders don't know about this." At this moment, Zhang Yan smiled and said, "We don't need to care about Zhongtai's own matters, we just need to wait for the Dragon Pillar Assembly in 3 months." The 2 of them hurriedly nodded. After Elder Bai left the hall, he said goodbye to a few of his good friends and was about to return to his cave dwelling to meditate when a middle-aged Taoist came over and said, "Elder Bai, please stay here for a moment." Elder Bai saw that this person's beard was fluttering in the wind and he had a sage-like demeanor. Although he didn't know him, he didn't dare to underestimate him and said, "This Taoist, why did you call me?" The Taoist bowed and said with a smile, "Tseng Tsongluan, came from Fire Hole Mountain. I came here to help Zhongtai defeat that Xianyu, but because I don't have a sect to join, I came to recommend myself to Elder Bai." Elder Bai heard that his tone was not small, so he thought that he was someone like Yang or Gu, so he said with a mocking tone, "Since you have such ability, why didn't you mention it just now in the banquet?" Sing Tongluan laughed and said, "Elder Bai, do you think that I am afraid of that Du Shirshuan? No, I can't announce my methods in front of others, I can only say them in private." Elder Bai Daoren said, "May I know what method it is?" Seng Tsongluan took half a step forward and said in a low voice, "I don't have any other abilities, but I have a book of stargazing in my hand. I can help people seek good fortune and avoid calamity, and I can point out the right path." Book of stargazing? Elder Bai couldn't help but be moved and asked, "Is it the item that Lu Gongnen, Taoist Lu had?" Seng Tsongluan smiled proudly and said, "Yes, Lu Gongnan is my senior apprentice brother. After he reincarnated, he gave this item to me." Elder Bai's heart was immediately moved. The Book of Stargazing was a rare treasure in the world. It could point out a way out of a difficult situation. From the start of the Dragon Pillar competition until now, it was already a matter of the rise and fall of the two sections. If he could get the help of this item, it would undoubtedly increase his chances of winning. He thought about it and said, "Taoist Seng, I heard that this treasure has many disadvantages to its owner. What do you need? You can tell me." Seng Tsongluan was waiting for him to say this. He was happy and said, "I don't have any other requests. If I can control a celestial city under Zhongtai, it will be enough." Chapter 678. The Golden Bell Platform and the Five-String Hall were the cultivation grounds of the previous sect leaders. The grass and trees in front of the hall were evergreen all year round, and the ground was covered with beautiful flowers and jade-like grasses. In the back garden, the sea of clouds billowed in the blue sky, and the sound of the tide could be heard continuously. There was a flying pleasure boat moored in the blue sky. The boat was 3,000 zhang long, and it was 5 stories high. It had a garden pavilion, a long corridor, and a golden bridge. The winding path led into a secluded place. Beautiful bamboos, lonely cattail leaves, strange rocks, and old pines decorated the place. Inside the main building of the floating boat, Du Shirshuan was bowing to a woman with a head full of pearls and jade. He said, "Greetings, mother." This woman was Madame Zhao, sect leader Qiao's Taoist companion, and also Du Shirshuan's birth mother. She looked to be in her 30s, her skin was white and smooth, her skin was round like pearls, and her eyebrows were full of charm. At this moment, she was reclining on the couch, wearing a wide-sleeved robe and a light muslin covering her body, revealing a section of her snow-white arms. She said with a slight languid tone, "My son has returned. Have you seen your father?" Du Shirshuan stood up and replied respectfully, "I have just returned from the banquet and have seen my father." Madame Zhao seemed to have thought of something. She sighed and said, "Recently, your father has been worrying a lot about the Dragon Pillar gathering. He is obviously an accomplished cultivator, but his hair is covered with white frost. In the future, you must help him more." Du Shirshuan scoffed, "The elders in the sect are all useless. If it wasn't for their stubbornness and rejection of other sects' techniques, I, Zhongtai, wouldn't be suppressed by Xianyu." Ever since the founding of Zhongtai sect, the Grand Master Demi, the sect has used the secret records of the compounding principles as its main technique. However, after thousands of years, no one was able to cultivate to the point of ascension. After sect leader Qiao took over as the sect leader, he felt that Zhongtai sect's techniques were incomplete and had many flaws. Therefore, he wanted to take the strengths of other sects to make up for it. However, the group of elders led by Elder Yen still held on to the original techniques. They believed that there must be a reason behind the Grand Master's techniques. As long as they took the half of the book from Xianyu sect, they would have the hope of achieving Tao. Afraid that there would be internal strife within the sect, sect leader Qiao could only put this matter aside for the time being. But who would have thought that the Xianyu sect was ahead of Zhongtai? In the recent hundreds of years, this sect had learned from the strong points of others and had almost completely revised the 3 Guanghui important techniques, discarding many of the flaws. That was why people like Rong Juanzhong had appeared. Fortunately, Sect leader Qiao had foreseen this and secretly sent some talented disciples to other places to practice the superior skills that the previous sect leaders had collected from other continents. However, this skill could not be shown to the public after all, and there were also the sect elders who interfered. Du Shixuan was the only one who had truly succeeded in his cultivation over the past several hundred years. After being defeated twice in the Dragon Pillar duels, Elder Yen had no choice but to take a step back. He believed that he could ask someone from the other faction to be of use to him, but he still refused to budge on the matter of making up for the missing parts of the cultivation method. Du Shixuan's actions just now in the hall were precisely to ruthlessly humiliate them. While the mother and son were talking, footsteps could be heard as a maidservant came in. She stole a glance at Du Shixuan and then placed a jade plate on the table. She bent her knees and said, "Madam, I just now picked the red fruits." There were about a dozen of them, piled up in the shape of a pagoda, and each one was red and juicy. Madame Zhao picked one up and placed it in her mouth. Feeling the sweet juice flowing between her teeth, she could not help but let out a soft moan. She then said, "My son, this fruit was planted by someone from the South Cliff continent. It can nourish one's inner qi and cleanse one's blood. Since you are training your strength, it will be good for you to eat more. Why don't you try it?" Du Shixuan said, "Thank you, madam." He did not have the habit of tasting the fruits carefully. His abdomen swelled up, and white smoke came out of nowhere, sucking the fruits into his mouth. Madame Zhao chuckled and sat up straight on the couch. She asked, "Since you have returned from the banquet, did you see any outstanding cultivators among the cultivators that you invited?" Du Shixuan said with disdain, "They are all loose cultivators. They are not even comparable to the elders of my sect." Madame Zhao was not surprised by this result. In the Dongsheng continent, the techniques practiced by the cultivators of the 5 big sects were the best. Other than the Shao Tsang realm, which could be compared, the other sects were far inferior. She pondered for a while and then said, "Those people are only used to boost our reputation. Against Xianyu, we still need to rely on our Zhongtai disciples. The rest cannot be trusted." Du Shixuan heard this and said, "Even the Fengxiang Sword School cannot be trusted?" Madame Zhao graduated from the Fengxiang Sword School. She was not sect leader Qiao's first wife. The reason why she could become the sect leader's wife was because of this. Madame Zhao looked into his eyes and said seriously, "That's right. The Fengxiang Sword School cannot be trusted either. Do you really think they are here to help me?" She had a cold smile on her face and said, "They are afraid that our 2 sects will unite and make up for the deficiencies in our techniques. They want Zhongtai and Xianyu to suffer great losses and finally perish like the 3 evil sections. But if Zhongtai dies, how can we, mother and son, go to live?" At this point, she changed her tone and said, "However, although we cannot completely trust them, we cannot completely abandon them either. For example, the people that were invited to the banquet. Although they were invited because of Elder Yen, they were originally from different places. As long as Yinghong is still the sect leader, we can use them for our own purposes. Sun, you have to pay attention. If there are any outstanding people among them, you can rope them in as soon as possible so that they can be of help to your father." Du Shixuan seemed to understand and nodded, "I understand." Madame Zhao leaned back and said, "This time, Rong Juanzhong is an obstacle in the way of the gathering of the Dragon Pillars. Only by getting rid of this person, Zhongtai will have a chance of winning." Du Shixuan said confidently, "Mother, the last 2 times I was not around, I allowed Rong Juanzhong to be so arrogant. Now that I am back, there is no need to be afraid." Madame Zhao nodded her head and her eyes were bright. She said, Good. With my son's help, your father will be able to sleep peacefully." At this moment, a servant girl carefully walked over to her side and said softly, "Madam, Taoist Hui Xian is here." Madame Zhao's beautiful eyes brightened and said, "Invite him in." After a short while, a figure flashed outside and in came a Daoran wearing a crane cloak, thin lips and hawk-like eyes. This person had deep lines on his forehead, thin straight eyebrows and sideburns. But his figure was illusory and there was a cloud under his feet. It was obvious that he was the Yuanying Dharmakaya. After entering the hall, he took a look and said, Is Sun here too? Du Shishun did not dare to be careless in front of this Daoran. He kept his sharp aura and closed fist saluted, "Greetings, uncle." Elder Hui Xian made a sound of acknowledgement and said, "That's just nice. I was just looking for you." Du Shishun said, "Does uncle have any instructions?" Madame Zhao smiled and said, "Why don't Shinren sit down and talk?" Elder Hui Xian nodded his head and sat down at the guest seat. He then said, "Sun, do you have any intention to take over the position of the next leader?" He asked so straightforwardly. Not only was Madame Zhao stunned, even Du Shishun was bewildered and asked hesitantly, "What does uncle mean?" Elder Hui Xian smiled faintly and said, "You don't have to reply me. I only want to tell you that after the previous 2 Dragon Pillar meetings, Zhongtai's vitality has been greatly damaged. Even if it uses 100 years, it may not be able to recover to its former state. In the future, it will definitely need to rely heavily on cultivators from outside the sect or from the lower sections. If you are interested, then you need to fight for the person in charge of the contract so that you can use those who are useful." Madame Zhao frowned and said, "That matter has always been handled by Elder Yen. If Sun'er interferes, will it make him unhappy?" 3 months later would be after the Dragon Pillars. Just that in order to prevent those cultivators from outside the sect from contributing, Zhongtai needs to sign the contract beforehand so that they can fight to the death with Xianyu. Elder Hui Xian blushed and said, "What time is it already? This is the last Dragon Pillar battle. If we lose again, Xianyu will not be far from swallowing Zhongtai. And in the sect, only Sun and that Rong Juanzhong have the ability to fight. Therefore we should fight and do not have to worry about other things." Madame Zhao looked at Elder Hui Xian with some resentment and lightly flicked her sleeves and said, "If brother-in-law is willing to help, why would it be like this?" Elder Hui Xian said in a deep voice, "This time I will also follow sect leader." He was originally a rogue cultivator, and because of his exceptional aptitude, he had once received pointers from Zhongtai Cave Jinren Zheng Weixing, therefore his achievements were extremely high. A few hundred years ago, he had already cultivated to the 3rd stage of Yuanying and was the most hopeful person in the continent to step into Grotto Heaven Realm. However, he was after all not a disciple of Zhongtai and did not go for the previous 2 battles. But this time there was no such restriction, therefore he decided to go. When Madame Zhao heard that he was willing to go this time, her beautiful eyes widened and said in surprise, "With brother-in-law helping out, merely Rong Juanzhong, I think it will be easy." But Elder Hui Xian shook his head and said, "Against this person, my chances of winning are not high." Madame Zhao could not help but be surprised. From what she saw, Rong Juanzhong had only reached the 3rd stage of Yuanying for a few decades, while Elder Hui Xian had hundreds of more years of cultivation, so it should be easy to deal with him. Why did he seem to be very fearful of this person now? Elder Hui Xian waved his hand and said, "It is inconvenient to say the reason for this matter, we can talk about it later. I have another important matter today, which is to introduce someone to Madame and Sun." After speaking, he flicked his sleeves and a puff of white smoke came out. After landing on the ground, it turned into a tall and burly cultivator with a thick beard and a wide face. The light in Du Shishun's eyes brightened, his fists clenched tightly, and he shouted sternly, "Who are you?" If there was any abnormality in this person, he would not care who brought him and would first kill him with a punch. Madame Zhao's brows were tightly knitted. This was her inner chamber, and this Hui Xian actually did not inform her and brought an outsider in, which made her slightly unhappy. Elder Hui Xian said in a deep voice, "Both of you do not panic. This friend's identity is hindered and it is inconvenient for him to enter and exit this room. There are also elders watching outside, so I had no choice but to make the decision on my own and bring him in." The cultivator laughed and cupped his hands. "I am Luo Dongchuan, greet Madame Zhao." He then bowed to Du Shishun and said, "Friend Du is too polite." When Madame Zhao heard his name, she was shocked and unconsciously stood up and pointed, "You are from Beima Haijia, that place." Luo Dongchuan chuckled and said, "Madame's guess is not wrong. I am from Luo family, and the clan leader, Luo Jiangyu, is my clan brother. Today I am here because of friend Hui Xian's invitation and for the big plan of our 2 families." Chapter 679. 3 months later, Zhongtai sect gathered the cultivators on the golden platform to discuss the signing of the contract. This time, sect leader Qiao did not show up and handed the matter over to Grand Elder Yan Qinghui. This elder was of high seniority and was the leader of all the elders in the sect. As soon as the hour of dawn passed, Zhang Yan rode on a ray of light from the guest house and arrived at the scene. He stooped down and saw incense burning on a table with green smoke rising in spirals. 2 Taoist children were standing on the platform, one holding a bell and the other a sword. Underneath the altar were several dozen praying mats, on which a dozen or so people were already sitting. Because there were no restrictive spells covering the altar today, with so many nascent soul cultivators gathered together, spiritual light shot out, illuminating more than 10 li away. Astral winds spiraled up to the horizon, so strong that it was difficult to gather, revealing a clear blue sky. At this moment, one of the Taoists raised his head and stood up. He bowed to him and said with a smile, "Taoist Zhang is here too." He looked behind him and said in surprise, "Why don't I see Taoist Tang and Taoist Song?" Zhang Yan recognized this person as Chen Shogu, who visited the pavilion a few times. He returned the greeting and said with a smile, "So it's Taoist Chen." After thinking about it, the 3 of them thought that they didn't have much confidence in this battle and didn't want to come. The Dragon Pillar battle was extremely dangerous, and once the contract was signed, there was no turning back. He came for the spiritual medicine, so he didn't have to worry. However, the 3 of them were considered to be members of the Deep Abyss sect, and they didn't have to fight for Zhongtai sect. Instead, they would be working for someone else. Chen Shogu had a look of pity on his face and said, "What a pity. I heard that the rewards this time are generous. If we miss this opportunity, we won't have another one like this in the future." Zhang Yan smiled and didn't say anything. The 2 of them chatted for a while more and then sat down. After a while, the cultivators arrived one after another. A month ago, Zhongtai had already sent a contract with all sorts of rules. Those who were unwilling to sign the contract would have to leave immediately. Those who didn't want to sign the contract had left long ago. Zhang Yan looked around. Although there were close to 50 people at the banquet, there were only about 20 people here, less than half of the previous ones. At this time, the bell rang and a strong wind suddenly rose. 3 rays of spiritual light flew out from the mountain and landed on the Dharma throne in the hall. 3 Taoists with bright clothes and high buns appeared. Chen Shou secretly transmitted his voice to him, "Fellow Taoist, please take a look. That person in the middle is Elder Yan. He's a senior with great authority." Rumor has it that even sect leader Qiao sometimes had to look at his face. He could make decisions with just a word. The one on the left was Elder Lin, who could not be underestimated. The one on the right was Elder Bai, who had shown up at the banquet. "Of course you do." Zhang Yan looked up and saw a kind-looking man in the middle. He had the body of a tortoise and the bones of a crane, and spiritual energy lingered around him. The 3 masses of strong clouds stretched out from the top, like a spring hitting metal and stone. It was empty and deep in the valley, causing one to feel as if they could hear strands of elegant sounds. In terms of cultivation, he was only slightly weaker than sect leader Qiao on the surface. After Elder Yan sat down, he looked at the crowd and said in a gentle voice, "Fellow Taoists, thank you for coming from afar to help Zhongtai. However, there are rules in our sect that cannot be easily violated. Today, I will make a contract with all of you. If you are willing, then stay. If not, then leave. I will not force you." He waved his sleeves and more than 20 rays of spiritual light flew down. Zhang Yan raised his hand to receive it and put it in front of him. What he saw was a shiny jade tablet with dozens of lines of words carved on it. He looked at them one by one. The content was different from the contract from before. It said that after the battle, if one retreated without reason or was timid in the face of the enemy, Zhongtai had the right to deal with them. Once the contract was signed, there was no going back. He looked down and saw that Zhongtai had promised rewards. This was something that had not been there before. He couldn't help but look carefully. At this moment, the cultivators also saw this. Perhaps they were excited. Someone read out loud, "Kill a Xianyue Yuaning cultivator." Other than the list of gifts, You will be rewarded with a good robe and 3 Jintai Chi replenishing pills. Kill a Xianyue elder. You will be given control of a celestial city. Kill Rong Juanzhong. Sect Master Qiao is willing to become sworn brothers with him. 3 cities will be given as a gift. No offerings, no summons, and all disciples will be protected by Zhongtai. At this point, a few gasps came from the crowd. The rewards were very generous. Even though they were all Yuanning cultivators, they were still tempted. Someone on the side mumbled, "Does Zhongtai have so many celestial cities?" Chen Shogu chuckled and said, "If we can get rid of the Xianyue elder, when the 2 sects become one, we won't have to worry about not having celestial cities." As soon as he said this, a few people made up their minds. They forced out a drop of blood and quickly signed the contract. Zhang Yan sneered. The Zhongtai and Xianyu sects might have been considering the fact that they were from the same sect, but from the looks of the rewards, it was clear that they were at each other's throats. They had completely shed all pretense of cordiality. However, if he could obtain a few more immortal cities, he wouldn't refuse them. He inserted a strand of spiritual qi into it, and in an instant, the 3 spirit medicines he needed appeared on it. He couldn't help but nod to himself. The fact that these 3 items appeared on the jade deed meant that the Zhongtai estate's treasury did indeed have these items. Thereupon, without any hesitation, he forced a drop of blood from his fingertip onto the jade tablet. The jade tablet trembled slightly. Kacha. It split into 2 halves. One half flew toward the 3 elders' hands, while the other half remained in his hand. On the other side of the stage, Elder Lin saw that the situation was under his control. He couldn't help but smile. He bowed to Elder Yen beside him and said, "Senior brother, I've prepared the order of the battle. Would you like to take a look?" Elder Yen nodded and said, "I'd like to take a look." Elder Lin took out a jade scroll from his sleeve and presented it to Elder Yen. When Elder Yen opened it, he pointed to the side and said, "Senior brother, please take a look. Based on what Senior brother has said, I have ordered people to test the names of those who are willing to sign the contract. There are a total of 5 people who have a grudge against me and refuse to comply. I used a red pen to mark out their names." Elder Yen grunted and immediately made a judgment. They are arrogant and can't be used. Elder Lin tried to sound him out. Then, Elder Yen waved the jade scroll in his hand and said, "Didn't you want to find someone capable to wear down Rong Juanzhong's arrogance? Let's choose this person." Elder Lin Daoren said, "Yes." After a while, the 20 Yuanning cultivators had all signed the contract. The contract jade flew to the front of the table. Elder Yen counted and saw that there was not a single one missing. He was not satisfied. The sect suffered heavy casualties the last 2 times, but with these people, the cultivators of the Zhongtai sect didn't need to risk their lives to fight on the front lines, thus preserving their vitality. As for the lives of these people, he didn't care. Suddenly, there was a loud noise in the sky. He looked up and saw a flame flying towards him. He squinted his eyes. Elder Lin was shocked and said, "Why is that Do kid here too?" The firelight didn't seem to care about anything else as it flew straight towards where the 3 of them were sitting. Elder Yen frowned and had no choice but to get up to avoid it. With a loud boom, the firelight smashed onto the stage and then dispersed outwards. Du Shixuan walked out of the fire. His eyes were shining. He first glanced at the people below the stage, then turned to the 3 elders and cupped his hands. Elder Yen was well-mannered and acted as if nothing had happened. He said with a smile, "Why are you here, junior leader?" Du Shixuan said loudly, "I was ordered by my father to host the contract signing meeting with all the elders." Elder Yan's expression didn't change. He asked, "Do you have proof?" Du Shixuan didn't say much. He took out a dark green jade talisman and flashed it in his hand. "This is the sect leader's token." Seeing that the other party came prepared, Elder Yen didn't say much. He chuckled and gestured with his hand. "Since it is the sect leader's order, we will naturally follow it. Junior leader, please take the main seat." Du Shixuan didn't stand on ceremony. He went to the main seat and sat down. The 3 elders had to retreat to the side. Elder Lin was indignant. He said, "It was already agreed that we would host it. I didn't expect this kid to interfere. Damn it. Elder Yen stroked his beard and said, although the sect leader is sometimes radical in his actions, he always has a plan. He has never gone back on his words. There must be a reason for this jade talisman. Elder Lin thought about it and said angrily, it must be the Zhao family. If they want to snatch him away from us, I will report this to the sect leader. Elder Yen shook his head. The sect leader still needs this kid to deal with Rong Juanzhong. He will definitely protect him. Even if you question him, he will only admit it. But so what if he is involved in today's matter? He killed 2 people in a row at the banquet and was merciless with his words. Let's see how many people are willing to go with him. Du Shixuan had been cultivating outside the sect for a long time. He didn't have any foundation in the sect. After listening to Madame Zhao's advice, he decided to pick a few cultivators from the crowd and recruit them as his subordinates. They would be the foundation of the sect and the Chu country in the future. But he called a few people up, but they all failed. The cultivators were afraid of his cruel actions that day and didn't dare to agree. The 3 elders sneered as they watched from the side. Elder Lin mocked, indeed, senior brother was right. Du Shixuan busied himself for half a day but no one was willing. He was annoyed, but when he turned his head around he saw Zhang Yan sitting calmly below the stage. His eyes lit up and he leaped down from his seat. Jinren, he said, you know why I am here, are you willing? Zhang Yan couldn't help but find it funny. This Du Shixuan clearly didn't know how to treat others, and his words were blunt. No wonder no one was willing to submit to him. However, this person was proud and arrogant, and his conduct was straightforward. Compared to those treacherous elders, he was much easier to get along with. Zhang Yan might even be able to obtain more benefits from him, so he smiled and said, since fellow Taoist Du has sincerely invited me, this humble Taoist shall accept. Du Shixuan was overjoyed. Zhang Yan was a cultivator of the 2nd level of Yuani. He was like a crane in a flock of chickens. Even though he wasn't famous, his cultivation was still there. Du Shixuan said, as long as you help me defeat Rong Juanzhong, I will not mistreat you. Yan Changfeng Daoren asked, who is that? Elder Bai took the deed jade and glanced at it. He said, the things this person asked for are mostly used by cultivators of the evil sections. Yan Changfeng Daoren said, so he is a remnant of the evil sections. Yan Changfeng Daoren said, no matter where he came from, he signed the contract. Since he is willing to follow Du Shixuan, let him be. Du Shixuan returned to the altar and remembered Madame Zhao's warning. He said, I heard that the elders have come up with the battle order. Show it to me. Elder Yen thought for a while and gestured to Elder Lin. Elder Lin had no choice but to pass the jade to Du Shixuan. Du Shixuan took it and looked at it. He saw that among the people fighting against Rong Juanzhong, Zhang Yan's name was there. He couldn't help but sneer. If it was before, he wouldn't have cared. However, this person was the first cultivator he had recruited with his own abilities. How could he allow these old men to manipulate him? He grabbed a pen from the table and crossed out Zhang Yan's name. Then, he casually circled another person's name and tossed it to Elder Yen. He said, in my opinion, this should be the arrangement. Elder Lin was furious. He slammed the table and stood up. This was decided before. How can it be changed? Chapter 680. After the contract signing ceremony was over, in order to win Zhang Yan's favor, Du Shixuan dragged him to his immortal's cave for a drink. Before parting, he gave Zhang Yan a lot of medicinal pills and magical tools, and personally escorted him out of the mansion. Zhang Yan rode the wind and traveled down Hope Sound Mountain. Suddenly, a ray of light flew in front of him and stopped not far from him. He took a look and saw that it was Qin Shogu, Taoist Qin. He couldn't help but smile. Taoist Qin, why haven't you left yet? Qin Shogu looked around and said in a low voice, Jinren Zhang, can I have a word with you? Zhang Yan pondered for a while, then nodded. The two flew away on the ray of light, and not long after, they landed on a hill outside the capital of Chu. After stopping, Qin Shogu sighed, Taoist Qin, you're muddle-headed. Why did you go to Du Shixuan's side? He's a violent person, and there are rumors that he's on bad terms with the elders of Zhongtai. I'm afraid you'll get into trouble if you keep contact with him. Zhang Yan glanced at him and said with a smile, Fellow Daoist Qin, which elder asked you to come here? Seeing that he had been seen through, Qin Shogu didn't hide it anymore, and simply said, To be honest, I came here on the request of Elder Bai. I know that you had a bad impression of Elder Lin because of the gift list, but after Elder Bai found out about it, he ordered the ceremony officer to punish him severely. After some investigation, he found out about what Zhenren Zhang did on Mount Shenwu. He felt that he had missed out on a great talent, so he asked me to come down and talk to you. How could Zhang Yan not know the other party's intentions? Trying to rope him in was just a facade, trying to attack Du Shixuan's true intentions. If Zhang Yan, who had just been recruited in name, ended up joining a group of elders, Du Shixuan would really become a laughingstock. He smiled and said, I will go back and think about this. Chen Shogu said cheerfully, Okay, if you change your mind, you can come find me anytime. Hope Sound Mountain Guest House. Zhang Boyan sat in the pill room, flipping through 2 books in his hands expressionlessly. These were the ancient Taoist books that Song Chuyuan had given to him in order to curry favor with him. When one's cultivation had reached his level, and he had the proper inheritance, there was naturally no need for him to put in the effort to learn the techniques of other sections. It was only easy for him to learn the divine abilities and techniques. He would not complain about having too many of them. In these 2 books, there was a small divine ability that was acceptable. Although its power was not obvious, it was easy to cultivate. It also had the ability to confuse the enemy, and it was quite compatible with his own path. He planned to take advantage of the time of the Dragon Pillar gathering to cultivate this technique. Just as he was deep in thought, a maid came in. Wan Fu said, Priest Zhang, there's someone outside the garden asking to see you. He says he's an old friend. Old acquaintances? Zhang Boyan put down the book. A faint green light flickered in his eyes as he asked warily, Did that person say his name? The maid said, No, he only said he wants to see Zhang Boyan, Zhenren. Since Qin Wenyan already knew his name, Zhang Boyan didn't bother guessing. Previously, in order to search for spiritual herbs, Qin Wenyan had indeed befriended a few people in Chu. Most likely, after hearing that he was here, they came to pay a visit. Zhang Boyan said, Invite him in. A while later, an old man came in from outside. He had a tired expression and was very thin. He was just a mystic light realm cultivator. When he came in and saw Zhang Boyan, he knelt down heavily and cried, Zhenren, please help and save my master's life. Zhang Boyan glanced at him and said coldly, Who are you? The old man knelt on the ground and said, I'm Xiang Fu, a steward of the Ying King's palace. Back then, when the Ying King invited Zhenren, I was there to accompany him. Do you remember? The Ying King was ranked 6th among the princes. He was the 6th prince who expressed goodwill to Zhang Yan many times back then. Zhang Boyan's gaze moved down and looked at him. He said, That's right, there was indeed someone like you at the banquet. Xiang Zhanfu choked with sobs and said, My master is in prison and needs to escape. I came to see you this time, so I hope that Zhenren can save my master for the sake of our relationship back then. Zhang Boyan suddenly laughed coldly and said, What a joke. I've only met your master a few times. We're just acquaintances. How can there be any relationship? Xiang Zhanfu hurriedly said, Yes, I said the wrong thing. Zhenren is an upper-class cultivator. He won't have anything to do with us. It's just that the Ying King is in trouble and none of the experts I know are willing to lend a helping hand. I can only come here to beg Zhenren. If this matter is successful, the Ying King is willing to give you a generous gift. Zhang Boyan laughed and said, Isn't the Ying King on good terms with the Hui Xiandaoren? Why did you come to me instead of him? Xiang Zhanfu laughed bitterly and said, Elder Ancestor is the current dynasty's state preceptor. It's not easy to invite a prince, let alone him. Zhang Boyan said, Even your sex people are trying to evade me. I'm an outsider, what can I do? Xiang Zhanfu was speechless. He could only kowtow and beg. Zhang Boyan let him do whatever he wanted. After a while, he smiled and said, Someone, take this person away and settle him down. Xiang Zhanfu was not sure whether he would agree or refuse. But since he did not chase him away, there was still some hope. He really had no other choice. Otherwise, he wouldn't have come to Zhang Boyan to beg. Before he left, he suddenly turned around and said, "Master, the servant girl beside your disciple is related to the Chu royal family. It's better not to show her face in the capital of Chu." Zhang Boyan was slightly startled, and then he recalled that the maidservant this person spoke of was Qiao Ying. He couldn't help but narrow his eyes, and the green flames in his eyes flickered indeterminately. No one knew what he was thinking. After a while, Zhao Yang came in and said, "Master, do you want to help this person?" Zhang Boyan snorted and said, "It doesn't matter what I think. In the end, it still depends on the governor." He looked at him again and said in a deep voice, "Let me ask you, have you mastered the spirit exorcism technique that I taught you?" Zhao Yang hurriedly said, "Just a little bit." Zhang Boyan said coldly, "You can't even master a small technique. What's the use of you? I'll give you another month. If you still can't master it, I'll punish you with 30 years of closed-door training." Zhao Yang was shocked. Ever since Zhang Boyan accepted him as his disciple, he only taught him the technique and then sent him away. As for whether he could master it or not, he never asked. Because the spirit exorcism technique was not very useful in a fight, he was not in a hurry to master it. He just spent his energy on polishing it every day. Now that his master gave him a death sentence, he didn't dare to delay. He said yes and went back to his room to practice with a bitter face. About 2 hours later, Zhang Boyan heard the faint whistling of the wind outside the pavilion. He guessed that Zhang Yan had returned, so he came out of the pill room. When he went outside, he saw a familiar ray of light flying over from afar. Song Chuyuan and the lame Taoist were playing chess, but they also sensed it and came out to welcome it. The ray of light landed in the courtyard in the blink of an eye. When the three of them saw it, they hurriedly went up to greet it. Zhang Yan rolled up his sleeves and restrained the spiritual light around him. He then raised his hand and said, "Fellow Taoists, you may rise." The lame Taoist straightened up and said, "Did Jinren sign the contract smoothly?" Zhang Yan smiled and said, "The contract is done, there are no problems." Song Chuyuan was a little nervous and said, "Who is Jinren going against? Is it Rong Juanzhong?" Zhang Yan smiled but didn't answer. He only said to Song Chuyuan and Tang Chuyuan, "The Sleeping Star Mountain's Dragon Pillar Gathering is on the 6th of next month. There is still a month before that. With such a big movement from Zhongtai, Xianyu will definitely make arrangements. It's just that I don't know much about it. Since the two of you haven't signed the contract, it's convenient for you to come and go. Please go check it out and come back to report to me." The two of them hurriedly nodded. At this time, Zhang Boyan took a step forward and said, "Manor Master, I have something to report." Zhang Yan nodded and said, "Zhang, follow me to the pill room later to talk." The two of them entered the inner room and sat down. Zhang Boyan then told him about the Ying King. Zhang Yan thought for a while and said, "This Ying King was imprisoned because of the palace curtain incident, so it's not appropriate for me to interfere. However, he gave me the snake ring jewel twice. This item is very helpful to my cultivation, so I owe him some karma. Since he came to my door, I can't just ignore him." Zhang Boyan saw that Zhang Yan wanted to help, so he knew what to do. He said, "Manor Master still has to go to the Dragon Pillar Gathering and can't be distracted. I have nothing to do, so I can help Manor Master handle this matter." Zhang Yan nodded and said, "With Zhang Zhang's help, it should be settled." Seeing that there was nothing else to do, Zhang Boyan took his leave. When he returned to his room, he ordered someone to find Xiang Zhanfu and said, "You said that you have a gift for me. What is it?" Xiang Zhanfu hesitated for a while, then gritted his teeth and said, "Jinren should know that the founders of Zhongtai and Xianyu factions were the same Grand Master to me. Before this Grand Master achieved Dao, he had a powerful opponent. Because their cultivation levels were similar, he could not do anything to him. Later on, the Grand Master went to another continent to find a powerful person and borrowed a magical weapon. Only then was he able to subdue this person. After founding Master Demi completed his Dao, he wanted to return this treasure. However, for some reason, not only could he not find this person, even his descendants could not find him. Due to the imminent ascension, he deliberately placed this item in a secret place on the sea and warned his descendants not to take it rashly. If a disciple from the other continents came, he could give it a try. If they were fated with the magic treasure, they could take it. He then knelt down again and said, "In King once said that if Zhenren is willing to save him, he is willing to tell me the whereabouts of the magical weapon." Zhang Boyan did not expect that the gift would involve an ascended Zhenren. He couldn't help but be surprised and asked, "Zhong Tai and Xianyu factions have been established for thousands of years. Could it be that no one has been able to take this item?" Xiang Zhanfu said, "Zhenren is wise. Zhong Tai and Xianyu factions have no use for this item. How would they be willing to let it fall into the hands of others? Therefore, they kept this matter a secret. Ordinary people would not know about it. As time passed, no one mentioned it. If it wasn't for Demon King and Crocodile who came to Chu and stole the treasure map, I'm afraid no one would remember this matter." Zhang Boyan's expression changed slightly. At this moment, he also remembered that when he first came to Dongxing with Zhang Yan, he seemed to have heard people from Xian Luo sect mention this matter. In that case, this person's words were somewhat credible. He said, since the map was stolen, it might have been taken by this demon. Xiang Zhanfu hurriedly said, "Zhenren, don't worry. That map is only a fake one. Otherwise, how would the Demon King take it? Moreover, there is a restrictive formation at the place where the treasure is buried. Even if we have the map, it would be useless to take it. In King once hid a copy of the real map. As long as In King is rescued, I will immediately give it to him." Chapter 681. After Zhang Boyan sent Xiang Zhanfu away, he felt that he couldn't handle this matter by himself, so he went to Zhang Yan's room to report. After they met, he explained the matter in detail and said, "I've met that King Ying twice. From an ordinary person's point of view, this person can be said to have deep foresight and is not an unintelligent person. Although I don't know why he was thrown into prison this time, but he will definitely not resign himself to death. He will definitely use all his bargaining chips to escape. From what I see, he is very trustworthy." Zhang Yan thought for a while and said, "Is the King of Ying in any danger?" Zhang Boyan replied, "I have already asked. This person is the son of Emperor Chu after all. Although he is imprisoned, he is surrounded in a cave on Mount Shao when outside of the city. Not only are there guards guarding him, there are also people who will send him food and water every day. Other than the fact that he is not allowed to meet with others, there is no harsh treatment. If there are no accidents, he will spend the rest of his life in the mountain." Zhang Yan immediately said, "Since there is no rush, let's talk about this after the Dragon Pillar ritual." There was only 1 month left until the Dragon Pillar ritual. If he could successfully defeat Xianyu, then he would come back and plan this matter. However, if Zhong Tai was defeated, then the entire faction would be destroyed. They wouldn't care about a prince who was imprisoned, and it would be easy to rescue him. Zhang Boyan smiled eerily and said, "Mannerhead, do you want me to think of a way to get the treasure map first?" Although Xiang Zhanfu said that he would give the map to him after the matter was done, he didn't believe that he couldn't get it if he used some tricks. At that time, whether or not he would save him would be up to him. As for whether or not it was moral, it wasn't within his consideration. Zhang Yan waved his sleeves and said, "No need." Even if there was no such thing, he was still willing to help because of the snake bracelet that the King of Ying gave him. Moreover, although Master Dami set the rules back then, he said that Xianyue Zhongtai's disciple couldn't take the treasure. But rules were dead and people were alive. If they really wanted this treasure, he didn't believe that no one would be able to find a loophole in it in the past few thousand years. Because of this, he determined that if he wanted to obtain this magic treasure, he would either have to be a disciple of the person who lent the treasure to him in the past, or he would have to be someone who was fated to obtain it. In short, this treasure is yours. No one else could take it. If it wasn't yours, it would be useless no matter how anxious you were. Why should he be a vile person? At the back of Hope Sound Mountain, sect leader Qiao, dressed in his ceremonial robes, walked alone into a dark stone cave. He couldn't even see his own fingers in front of him. Wherever he landed, he could only hear the echoes of emptiness. Lingering about, a moment later, a bright light appeared in front of his eyes. He had already walked out of the cave. In front of him appeared a stone staircase that was carved along the mountain wall. On the side, there was a waterfall gushing down violently. The stone path was polished until it was smooth and glossy, and the edges and corners were all gone. Following this path, they soon entered the depths of the ravine. After another hour, the scene before his eyes suddenly blurred, and it seemed as if he'd changed to another world. He'd actually arrived within a gorge. This place was quiet and serene. The sound of water dripping could be heard. Like the plucking of a zither, it was pleasing to the ear. Separated by a cliff, he could see a cave door that was 1,000 feet tall. From time to time, there would be clouds rising from the peak, steaming upwards. This was the return of Feather's Scenery Grotto Heaven. Ever since Grandmaster Demi of Zhongtai, for thousands of years, the three masters of the Grotto Heaven had all cultivated here. Sect leader Qiao shifted his head to take a look, and saw a white rhinoceros the size of a giant elephant lying on a flat rock in front of him. Its huge body was slightly moving up and down as it breathed. He immediately cupped his fists and said, "Dao brother, I wish to pay a visit to the master, please inform him." After a while, the white rhinoceros lazily lifted its eyelids. Seeing that it was sect leader Qiao, it didn't bother with him, turned around, and went back to sleep. Sect leader Qiao shook his head helplessly and didn't go forward to urge him. Instead, he sat cross-legged on the ground. Although this strange beast was guarding the door, it wasn't voluntary. Instead, it was captured by Master Zheng and forced to swear an oath. Because it was indignant, every time someone from Zhongtai sect came to see it, they would give it the cold shoulder. It had long since gotten used to it. The white rhinoceros slept for 8 hours. Finally, it stretched its limbs and slowly stood up. Its body that was like a small mountain shook, its eyes staring at sect leader Qiao, and it roared, "The master is calling you in." Its voice rumbled, shaking the top of the cave and causing a lot of gravel to shake off. Sect leader Qiao opened his eyes and stood up, bowing. Then a cloud appeared under his feet, and he soared into the cave. This cave was hidden within a cave, and it was as dense as a beehive. If one didn't know the path, they would definitely not be able to find the right way. After passing through an unknown number of holes, they finally reached the end. On the mountain wall, there was a white jade statue. It was 10 feet tall and deeply embedded into the wall. Its appearance was that of a big-eared Taoist, and its facial features were vivid and lifelike. In front of it, there was a furnace with 2 dragons facing each other, and its entire body was bathed in dense fog. Sect leader Qiao walked in front of the jade statue, lit a high incense, and inserted it into the furnace. After waiting for a moment, he bowed and said, "Master, next month, Martial Nephew will lead everyone to Sleeping Star Mountain to have a showdown with Xianyu. After this battle, we can decide who will be the true disciple of Patriarch Daimao." The jade statue's eyes suddenly came to life, emitting a fine light. Then, a loud voice came from within. "Go ahead without worry. I'll be in the sect, so you won't have to worry." A trace of worry appeared on sect leader Qiao's face. He could feel that although there was nothing strange in Master Zheng's words, compared to the last time he came, his aura seemed to be much weaker. This master had lived for more than 3,000 years. Logically speaking, he should be at the end of his lifespan. However, Zhongtai had no successor for the past 1,000 years. Once he left, there would be the danger of being annexed by other sections. Therefore, 200 years ago, this jade statue was secretly chiseled out and connected to the underground spirit veins. It was constantly nourished to prolong its life. However, this move could only be delayed for 200 to 300 years. For cultivators, it passed in the blink of an eye. Sect leader Qiao bowed and said, "Martial Nephew, may I ask if Master Zheng?" Master Zheng could tell what he was thinking and said, "I can at least hold on for another 20 years. In this small world created by Grandmaster, outsiders can't peep into it. Don't worry." Sect leader Qiao's face was still worried. He hesitated for a moment, then suddenly bowed deeply and said, Martial nephew sincerely asks martial uncle to stay for another 100 years. At present, the biggest worry of the Zhongtai sect was that none of its disciples could cultivate the compendium's secret record to the third tier of the nascent soul realm. The ones with the highest cultivation in the sect were him and Elder Yen. Although Du Shishuan wasn't weak, he didn't cultivate the techniques of the sect. Even if they could defeat Xianyu this time, no one could enter the Grotto Heaven realm. Then, when Master Zheng left, how could they fight against the three sects in the south? There was another variable, which was the Python tribe above the North Sea. The demon tribe was eyeing the door like a tiger watching its prey, ready to take a bite at any time. With such internal and external troubles, if the situation didn't reach a point where he had no choice, he really didn't want to fight to the death with Xianyu at this time. Master Zheng was silent for a moment, then a deep sigh was heard. It's not that I don't want to. It's not easy to prolong my life for a few 100 years. Right now, I can still release my aura to deter the three sections. However, the longer the time drags on, the easier it is to reveal flaws. 200 years is already the limit. If it goes on, it will be a futile effort. Sect leader Qiao said excitedly, but as long as Master Zheng is still in the sect, how would others dare to act rashly? Master Zheng just didn't say anything. Sect leader Qiao said with a trembling voice, "Is there really no other way?" Master Zheng seemed to be thinking about something. After a while, he slowly said, "There's one more way." Sect leader Qiao couldn't help but take a few steps forward and said happily, "Martial uncle, please say it. As long as martial nephew can do it, I will do my best." Master Zheng said, "If you can defeat Xianyu this time, it means that the heavens don't want Zhongtai to die. You can use the sect's treasure, the White Elephant Cauldron, to shift the fate energy and add it to me. That way you can fulfill your wish. However, if you do that, it will just be a waste of food. Zhongtai will definitely be met with misfortune. You have to think it through." Sect leader Qiao was startled. He frowned and thought for a long time. Then he raised his head and said resolutely, "If martial uncle is not in the sect, it will be difficult for Zhongtai to stand in Dongxing. It can be said that we are bound together for good or bad. If this method is really feasible, martial nephew is willing to give it a try." He couldn't care about the future now. He could only think about other things after getting through the difficulties in front of him. There was no joy or anger in Master Zheng's voice. He just said, "Since you have made up your mind, then do it. However, you have to remember that if you don't win this battle, then everything will be over." For the sake of this battle, Sect Master Qiao could be said to have exhausted all of his resources. He said in a deep voice, "This time, Zhongtai sect has already decided to cut off all means of retreat. As long as spiritual master he doesn't obstruct us, there's nothing to worry about." Zhenrenzheng said, "You don't have to worry about this. Su is around the same age as me. In terms of lifespan, he should have reached the end. A few years ago, I observed the energy in the clouds and it was still flourishing and not declining. He must have used a method to prolong his life. He isn't much better than me now." Sect leader Qiao was slightly relieved and wanted to leave. However, before he left, he thought of something and couldn't help but ask, "Under that dragon pillar, is there really a Taoist book written by Patriarch Damu?" This was also something that the previous sect leader had said before he passed away. He didn't know the specifics. Later on, he fought with Xianyu. Because the two sects were in the same predicament, he couldn't hand it over no matter if there was or not. In a few days, he would fight with Xianyu. This might be the last time he came here, so he wanted to get to the bottom of it. Master Zheng said, "This is not nonsense. Back then, before Patriarch Damu achieved Tao, he specially went to the Dragon Pillar. At that time, he brought two attendants. One of them was Jinzhong Jinren, and the other was Xianyu sect's Cheng Kuang Jinren." Sect leader Qiao nodded and said, "So that's how it is." He secretly said that it was a pity. The dragon pillars of the two sects had only been weakened in the recent hundreds of years, so the two sects had the opportunity to take advantage of it. Previously, even if they had the thought of getting to the bottom of it, they didn't know where to start. Since he got the confirmation, he completely let go of his thoughts. What was left was to fight with Xianyu to the death. He solemnly bowed to Jinren Zheng's jade statue and turned to leave the cave. After he left for a long time, Bai Shi, who was lying at the door, suddenly said, "Zheng Weixing, what you said just now was clearly nonsense." Jinren Zheng said calmly, "If he didn't do that, he would also lose his heart. How could he fight Shen Yu?" Bai Shi sneered and said, "But if you die 100 years later, won't I have to guard the door for you for another 100 years? At this time, Jinren Zheng said lightly, "I advise you to wait for a few more days. It's not a good thing to rush out." Bai Shi asked doubtfully, "Why?" Chapter 682. On the first day of the 6th month, the Zhongtai sect gathered all the elders and disciples above the core transformation stage, the city lords of the various immortal cities, and the nascent soul cultivators that they had recruited. There were exactly 42 of them. They set off from the Golden Bell platform and flew toward the Sleeping Star Mountain where the battle was going to take place. Those who could cultivate to the Yuanying stage were mostly lords of a region. They brought flying instruments with them, and behind them were hundreds of disciples. Many of them rode on boats in the sky and displayed their abilities. From afar, it was as if the clouds were dyed red, and the sky was filled with clusters. They gathered like a tide and rushed towards the southeast. Sect leader Qiao and his wife were riding on a three-shouldered flying carriage with a golden canopy. It was as big as a palace room and could accommodate 1,000 people. In front of it, there were 186 dragon horses pulling it. The horses neighed and neighed. Around the carriage, there were more than 500 disciples guarding it on long boats. The husband and wife were dressed in luxurious Taoist robes and stood side by side under the canopy. Madame Zhao looked back at the mountain gate with worry in her eyes. "Sect leader, this time our sect is out in full force. There is no one left to guard the sect. I'm afraid it's not appropriate." Sect leader Qiao comforted her. "Don't worry. The sect has Jinren Zheng to look after it. The gathering of dragon pillars is the most important thing. If we can't win, what's the use of this pile of rubble?" He paused and softened his tone. "Are you worried about Cheng? I've already told Wan Yang that if we can't make it back, she should bring Cheng and Dao Shu to another continent. There's no need to come back, and don't hope to achieve Dao in this life. Just live a long life." Cheng was his and Madame Zhao's son. He was only 5 years old and not old enough to cultivate Dao. Other than a few confidants, even Elder Yen and Du Shixuan didn't know about him. Madame Zhao frowned when she heard sect leader Qiao's ominous tone. It was as if he was making arrangements for his death. She forced a smile and pretended to be relaxed. "My husband has gathered so many people. Their strength is far greater than the previous duels. How could they lose?" Sect leader Qiao sighed. "There are many people, but their hearts are not united. What can we do?" As he spoke, he looked towards the end of the horizon and said, "My Zhongtai sect lost the last 2 battles, and as the sect master of Zhongtai sect, I can't absolve myself from the blame. If I lose again this time, then how would I have the face to sit on this position? In this battle, if you don't win, you'll die." Madame Zhao sighed and leaned against him. She held his hand and said softly, "Husband, don't worry." In terms of ability, Sun doesn't lose to Rong Juanzhong. I, Zhong Tai, have a greater chance of winning. Sect leader Qiao nodded silently. He grabbed Madame Zhao's slender hand and squeezed it hard before letting go. The two of them quietly stayed on the boat for a while. Madame Zhao looked up and said, "My husband, I have been practicing my secret technique for the past few days. I'm a little tired, so I'm going to rest first." Recently, sect leader Qiao had been cultivating in seclusion to deal with the dragon pillar battle. He did not sleep peacefully in Madame Zhao's room. When he heard that Madame Zhao was also training hard in a divine power, he gently said, "Madame, please do not work too hard." Madame Zhao smiled gently, bowed, and excused herself. She returned to the carriage. She looked behind her and saw that no one followed her. She walked down the stairs and arrived in front of an alchemy room. She waved the maid in front of her away and looked left and right. She quickly lifted the curtain and entered the room. She then used a restrictive spell to seal the door. After calming herself down, She shook her sleeves and a pearl flew out. After it circled around the room, a cloud of smoke flew out and a graceful figure appeared. When the smoke dissipated, it was a young lady with bright eyes. Her skin was as white as jade, and her lips were red. She was so beautiful that even Madame Zhao paled in comparison to her. Especially this lady's bright eyes, clear and clean. There was a sense of innocence and kindness that made people feel good about her. Madame Zhao saw the lady's appearance and was slightly dazed. She then probed, "Are you Lady Luo?" The lady curtsied and said with a sweet voice, "Yes, I am." Madame Zhao took a deep breath. Even though the woman in front of her was only at the level of the golden core, her status was not to be underestimated. She did not dare to look down on her. She said gently, "Lady Luo, I would like to ask, if I agree to your tribe's conditions, will you really help me, Zhong Tai, to overcome this crisis?" The lady said, "Madame Zhao, I am only in charge of passing the message. I don't know what Madame Zhao said to those nephews. I can only say that if it was something that was already agreed upon, my tribe will not go back on our word." Madame Zhao looked at her and saw that she was serious. She did not seem to be trying to trick her. She nodded and started thinking again. That day when Luo Dongchuan came, he said that he could help Zhong Tai deal with Xianyu. All he needed was a place in Dongsheng continent for the Mang tribe to settle down. Not only that, he could also help Zhong Tai form an alliance to fight against the 3 southern factions. At that time she was tempted. However, she and sect leader Qiao had been married for hundreds of years. She knew that unless he was at the end of his rope, he would never agree to this condition. However, she did not want to break off this line. After some discussion, the Mang tribe sent this lady over. They said that if they had any ideas, they could inform them at any time. Just now, she was confused because of her concern. Now, she gradually calmed down. She hesitated for a while and said apologetically, "Lady Luo, I am sorry. Let me think about it." The lady had a good temper. She smiled sweetly and said, "No problem. Madam, when you have decided, you can call me Lady Luo again." Madame Zhao waved the pearl in her hand. The lady turned into a wisp of smoke and entered the pearl. A few miles away from sect leader Qiao and his wife's carriage, there was a dragon-headed boat with 7 wings. This was Du Shixuan's carriage. At this moment, Zhang Yan was also sitting on this boat. Du Shixuan seemed to be in high spirits. He pointed at his feet and said, "This boat is called the time-frightening ox boat. It flies very fast. Every 2 hours, it plays a tune that can disturb the ears and eyes of cultivators and cause them to feel uneasy. There are also 12 flags. Once taken out, it can set up a restrictive formation in a breath. Even if many Yuanian cultivators attack at the same time, they will not be able to break through. I have asked my father for it a few times, but he always refused. I didn't expect to get it today." There was a handsome Taoist sitting below. He flattered, "Young sect leader, with this boat, you are like a tiger that has grown wings. Rong Juanzhong is no match for you." Although this flattery was a little clumsy, Du Shixuan felt that it was natural. He immediately laughed and said, "Well said. Someone, bestow a jar of life-preserving celestial wine to Taoist Xing." The Taoist was stunned at first, then he was overjoyed and quickly got up to thank him. This life-preserving celestial wine was not an ordinary wine. It was brewed from the dew accumulated in the white elephant cauldron every day and supplemented with hundreds of spiritual herbs. There was only 1 jar a year. Even if a cultivator drank it, it would have the effect of nourishing their qi and prolonging their life. In the Zhongtai sect, it was usually only bestowed upon those who had made great contributions. He did not expect to get it with just a few words, so he could not help but feel proud. He looked at Zhang Yan as if he was showing off. Zhang Yan smiled and ignored him. This Taoist's name was Xing Fu Lu. When he signed the contract, he was originally a disciple of Elder Yan. However, it was later rumored that Elder Yan had an affair with one of Elder Lin's concubines, so he switched to Du Shixuan. Although this person's cultivation was not very high, Du Shixuan was not on good terms with the elders. After hearing about this, he wanted to annoy Elder Lin. Therefore, not only did he take Xing Fu Lu as his subordinate, He also repeatedly rewarded him. Xing Fu Lu thought to himself, Du Shixuan is so generous, and this Taoist Zhang came here long before me. I wonder how much more benefits he received. What does this jar count for? Thinking about this, he became dissatisfied. He rolled his eyes and said, Taoist Zhang, I heard that you are in charge of the celestial city of Shenwu Mountain. I have been to many famous mountains and rivers in Dongxing, but I have never been here. How does Shenwu Mountain compare to other places? Zhang Yan smiled and said calmly, I came from another continent and have been in the sect for a long time. I have not been to other places. When Xing Fu Lu heard that he was a cultivator from another continent, he felt disdain in his heart. He laughed and deliberately put on a blushing expression. He said, Dongxing is very far away from other continents. I wonder why Taoist Zhang crossed the ocean to come here? At this point, he exclaimed and slapped his forehead. He put on an apologetic expression and said, It is my fault. If it is inconvenient for Taoist Zhang, there is no need to say it. When Du Shixuan heard this, he seemed to remember something. He suddenly turned to look at Zhang Yan and said with a burning gaze, I heard from the servants that a few hundred years ago, Shen Baishuang, who came to Dongxing to travel, was Taoist Zhang's uncle master? After he took Zhang Yan as his subordinate, he told Madame Zhao. After that, Madame Zhao ordered people to investigate his background. Just now, she knew that this person's background was not simple, so she told her son to win him over. Zhang Yan did not hide it and admitted, yes. Du Shixuan nodded. When Shen Baishuang traveled to Dongxing, as long as someone came to his door, he would kill them without saying a word. This suited his temperament. He put on a serious expression and said, I have heard of Zhenren Shen's fame in the past. I believe Taoist Zhang is also somewhat capable. I hope that Taoist friend will join me in fighting the enemy. Zhang Yan bowed and said, That is how it should be. Du Shixuan laughed and said, Come, give Zhenren Zhang 3 jars of Millennium life-preserving wine. Xing Fu Lu's expression changed slightly. From the wine, he could tell that the two of them had a high status in Du Shixuan's heart. He could not help but curse and said, You are just relying on the shadow of your ancestors. What's so great about it? In a few days, you better not show your fear in the battle. After Zhongtai's sect traveled southeast for 5 days, they arrived at Sleeping Star Mountain on the 6th day of the month. Du Shixuan stood up from his seat and took a few steps to the bow of the boat. He pointed ahead and said, Taoist friend, please take a look. That is the South Dragon Pillar. Legend has it that it was the place where founding Master Daimu cultivated. Zhang Yan looked ahead and saw a huge pillar in the clouds. The pillar's body was faintly discernible. It was actually a convergence of mist and smoke. At the top, there was a coiling dragon that was baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. In the clear sky for thousands of miles, this snow-white pillar of smoke reached the sky. It was condensed and did not dissipate. Beside it, there were dozens of floating mountains of different sizes surrounding it. It was a magnificent sight. Not mentioning the Immortal's palace below, just this scene alone could be considered a great spectacle. Zhang Yan took a few glances and felt a sense of déjà vu. After thinking about it again, he realized that the flying mountains were quite similar to the Star Stone. He said, I heard that this object was left behind by ancient celestials. Now, it seems that it is possible. Chapter 683. While Zhang Yan was pondering, Zhongtai's group of cultivators had already arrived in front of Sleeping Star Mountain. At that moment, sect leader Qiao issued an order for everyone to slow down and not rashly enter the mountain. Although there were many cultivators there and Xian Yu would not have the intention to ambush them, it was easy for them to cause some trouble and humiliate Zhongtai's cultivators. Everyone perked up and drove the flying boat forward slowly. A moment later, they entered the mountain. As soon as Zhang Yan entered, he felt that something was amiss. He looked up and saw that the weather around him had suddenly changed. A moment ago, it was clear that the sky was clear and warm, but all of a sudden, a strong wind pushed the river, and the waves were high and swift, sweeping away the clouds in the sky. The next moment, it was sad and bleak, cold dew condensed, and fallen leaves fluttered. Not long after, it was raining and snowing, haze, clouds, hail, and frost returned to the earth. For a moment, it was as if the 4 seasons had changed in an instant. Xing Fuliu was shocked. He stood up and said, "The weather has changed. Could it be that the people from Xianyu sect have arrived?" Zhang Yan smiled and said, "The people from Xianyu sect are in a good mood. They actually used such a treasure to welcome their guests." The weather within thousands of miles of Sleeping Star Mountain had also changed. Even a cultivator at the 3rd stage of Yuanying did not have such an ability. Other than the venerable Dong Tian, only the treasure of Xianyu sect, the 3-mountain qi-suppressing tablet, could do it. However, this might be able to intimidate those cultivators who did not know about it. Most of the cultivators who came were Yuanying cultivators, so no one would be frightened. Du Shixuan sneered and said, "What a good treasure. After this battle, it will belong to me, Zhong." On the other side of the flying boat, Elder Lin snorted and said, "I've long heard that Xianyu sect has disrespected the ancestors. They are showing off the treasures bestowed by Patriarch Daimu. Their luck is endless, and it's unreasonable." Elder Yen smiled faintly and said, "The 2 sects are united. However, we need to know our limits during the battle later. We are not the ones to take the lead, so don't force yourself." As he spoke, he gestured towards where Du Shixuan was, and his intentions were self-evident. Elder Bai and Elder Lin exchanged glances with each other and nodded to show that they understood. The Zhongtai sect came from the west, and there was a majestic peak in the east of the Sleeping Star Mountain, which was the highest among the mountains. At the foot of the mountain, there was a large meandering river that flowed ceaselessly. There was an altar built on top of it. There were dozens of Taoists dressed in different clothes, guarding one person in the middle. This person was tall and muscular, his face was fair and beardless, and his eyes were bright and clear. It was Xianyu's sect master, Yang Shuyong. There were 2 people standing beside him. The one on the left was short and skinny with a bald head. There was a ring of faint golden light around his fontanelle, holding up 3 strong clouds. He was the guardian elder of the sect, the Golden Spirit Elder. The one on the right was about 3 meters tall, and he was tall and strong. He held a black metal plate in his hand, wore a pheasant crown and golden armor, and had a pair of iron whips hanging from his waist. He was the chief messenger of the sect, Chun Yuji. Not far in front of Yang Shuyong, there was a beautiful girl dressed in red clothes. She was happily playing with a jade tablet in her hand, and as she shook the treasure in her small hand, streaks of spiritual light shot into the sky, causing the weather to change. The Golden Spirit Elder suddenly felt something, and said in a low voice, "Sect Master, the people from Zhongtai sect have arrived." Yang Shuyong's expression slightly froze. He walked forward and lovingly caressed the little girl's head, saying, "Ew, stop playing." The little girl tugged at Yang Shuyong's robe and pouted, saying, "Daddy, letting her play for a while longer." Yang Shuyong bent down and picked up the little girl, coaxing, "Be obedient. Take this jade tablet, you can play with it however you want when you get back." The little girl happily cheered and said, "Daddy, don't go back on your word." Chun Yu-cheong chuckled and lightly caressed the back of the little girl's head. The little girl immediately fell into a deep sleep. He turned around and handed the jade tablet to a servant girl behind him and said with an indifferent expression, "Take good care of her. If there are any mistakes, you will know what to do." The servant girl's body trembled, and she lowered her head and carefully left with the little girl. The Golden Spirit Elder pondered for a moment and said, "Sect Master, the young master is still young, and it is not appropriate for him to hold the sect's precious treasure." Yang Shuyong was not pleased, and he said, "It is just a broken jade that can change the weather. Can't I give it back to my daughter?" The Golden Spirit Elder quickly lowered his head and he said, I don't dare, it is just a gift from the Patriarch after all." Yang Shuyong ignored him, and he turned around to look behind him and said loudly, "This sect master has given the 3-mountain qi suppressing tablet to my daughter. Do you have any objections?" None of the elders and cultivators behind him made a sound. Yang Shuyong then looked at the Golden Spirit Elder, and he was satisfied when he saw him lowering his head, not daring to say anything. He had only been the sect master for a short period of time, but the previous sect master, with the support of a few protectors and elders, had changed the sect's cultivation method, and people like Rong Juanzhong appeared. After he took over the sect, he used this good foundation to defeat Zhong Tai twice in a row, and his prestige increased greatly. Only then did he stabilize his position as the sect master. Compared to the elders of Zhong Tai sect, he had walked on a different path, and he believed that there was nothing that the patriarch could not exchange for. Just now, he purposely took out the sect's treasure for his daughter to play with, and now he said he would give it to her. He wanted to use this to test the reaction of the people in the sect, and see if there were still people who were not convinced. If there were, he would use this chance to clean them up. Chun Yu-ji saw the heavy atmosphere, and he took the initiative to say, "Sect Master, look, there are many people from Zhong Tai." Yang Shuyong glanced over and he said, "About 40 people? Xiao Huanzhuan, Du Shixuan, Hui Xian, Zhao Ru, TSK, they're all here. This time, Zhong Tai is not leaving any way out." Although Xian Yu had won the previous 2 battles, he had also suffered quite a bit of damage. He wasn't much better off than Zhong Tai. As a result, after Zhong Tai recruited cultivators from other sects, Yang Shuyong followed suit. For this battle, all the Yuanying cultivators that could be invited were invited, and the number of people was roughly equal. This battle could be said to have gathered almost half of the Yuanying cultivators in the entire Dongxing continent, and it could be said that all the sects in the continent had their eyes on this place. The Golden Spirit Elder observed carefully for a while, and he calculated, "Sect Master, Zhong Tai sect originally had 9 elders, but in the previous 2 battles, 3 died, and only 6 are left. There are also 11 Celestial City Lords, and this time, more than 50% of the cultivators are from outside the sect, and it is exactly as the secret report said." Yang Shuyong sneered, "What secret report? Zhong Tai didn't hide anything at all. Golden Spirit Protector, you don't have to show off, I know your contribution." The Golden Spirit Elder coughed. This sect master's words were sharp. He never gave people face, and although he was used to it, that was in private. Now that he was in front of everyone, he couldn't help but feel annoyed. Chun Yu-ji said, "Sect Master, Zhong Tai seems to be strong, and our sect is slightly inferior, but as long as we can think of a way to get rid of the 6 people and Sect Master Qiao and his wife, the rest won't fight us to the death." Yang Shuyong waved his hand and said, "Going against me, Xian Yu, won't let them off easily. Remember, today, we are facing Zhong Tai's people. Don't let a single one of them go. We must kill them all. Don't let a single one of them go. You must kill them all. As for the others, let's see if they know their place." His words were filled with killing intent, and Chun Yu-ji and the Golden Spirit Elder's expressions changed slightly. There were many Yuanying cultivators on the other side, and if they fought to the death, causing Xian Yu to suffer too many losses, how would they deal with the 3 southern sects? Putting this aside, Xian Yu and Zhong Tai came from the same root. Even if they lost, it wouldn't be to the point of fighting to the death. Yang Shuyong saw that no one responded and mocked, "Are you all afraid?" In Zhong Tai sect, other than Du Shixuan, only Yan Luoqing and Xiao Huanzhuan have slightly higher cultivations. The rest are all Yuanying first rank. How can they compare to me, Xian Yu? Ever since Xian Yu changed his cultivation method, not only did he produce an outstanding character like Rong Juanzhong, there were also 4 cultivators who stepped into the 2nd rank. Including Sect Master Yang Shuyong and the Golden Spirit Elder, there were 6 Yuanying 2nd rank cultivators, their abilities far above Zhong Tai. The Golden Spirit Elder reminded, "Sect Master, Zhong Tai still has ancestor Hui Xian, his cultivation is unfathomable, don't be careless." Yang Shuyong said impatiently, "This old thief will be taken care of by enlightened Rong, you don't have to be afraid, it's not your turn to fight this person, leave." The Golden Spirit Elder could only leave. Chun Yu-ji watched for a while, then suddenly pointed and said, "Sect Master, the person sitting next to Du Shixuan also seems to be a Yuanying 2nd rank cultivator." Yang Shuyong grunted, his eyes focused as he looked at the direction Chunyuji pointed at, frowned and asked, "Do you know this person?" An additional second-rank cultivator could give them some trouble, but Xianyu still had the upper hand, so there was no need to worry. But he was afraid that Zhong Tai would lead a wolf into the house, colluding with the scourge of the North Sea demon tribe. But looking at this person's aura, not only was he not a demon cultivator, he seemed to be from a large sect. He didn't remember such a person from the 5 sections. The Golden Spirit Elder quickly came over and said, "Sect Master, that person's surname is Zhang. He is the leader of the Northern Godly House's Deep Abyss Gate." Yang Shuyong muttered to himself, "Deep Abyss Gate? Why does it sound so familiar? There are at least 20 people from the 5 sects who can cultivate to the 2nd rank, and all of them are famous. Who is this person?" The Golden Spirit Elder hesitated. This person claims to be from the same sect as Shen Baishuang from 200 years ago. He should be his junior. Yang Shuyong thought about it, then asked, "Is it the Shen Baishuang who killed Elder Chu?" The Golden Spirit Elder said, "Sect Master's vision is vast. It is this person." Yang Shuyong sneered. He made his decision extremely quickly and immediately said, "No wonder. I was originally thinking that such a talent was rare and wanted to recruit him. Since he has an old grudge with my sect, I can't keep him. Send out my orders. I'll bestow an immortal city to whoever can kill this person." The Golden Spirit Elder nodded and said in a deep voice, "That's right, since he came to us, we can't let him go. Elder Chu and I have a good relationship. Please hand this person over to Daoren." When Shen Baishuang came to Dongsheng, one of the Xianyu sect's elders had a bad relationship with him, so they fought. But since the difference in their cultivation was too big, the elder was killed in an instant. At that time, the Xianyu sect's heavenly abode, He Su, was trying to extend his life, so he couldn't do anything to Shen Baishuang, who was already a Yuanying 3rd-rank cultivator, so he could only tolerate him. After the incident, it was even stranger that he actually ordered his disciples not to seek revenge on the Deep Abyss Gate. As for the reason behind it, only Jinren he knew after the death of the previous sect master. Yang Xiong said, "All right. It's rare for the Golden Spirit Protector to ask for help, so of course I will fulfill your wish, but I have to say this first. If you fail and bring shame to the Xianyu sect, I will punish you." Since the Golden Spirit Elder had spoken, then there was no way out. He thought he had something to rely on, so he said, "Daoren obeys." At this moment, a female cultivator came from afar and stopped a few miles away. Wan Fu said, "Is this the Xianyu sect master, Jinren?" Sect Master Qiao invites Jinren up to the extreme heaven for a chat. Yang Shuyong smiled in disdain. Qiao Huanzhuan still likes this kind of thing. That's good, I want to see what he can do this time. Chapter 684. After Yang Shuyong went up to the zenith heaven, he looked around and saw that Zhongtai sect Master Qiao Huanzhuan had already arrived. He was also alone. He greeted, "Sect Master Qiao, long time no see. I wonder how your honorable sect's Master Zheng is doing?" Sect leader Qiao's expression didn't change. "Your sect's Jinren, he has thought it through." Yang Shuyong snorted and didn't ask any more. Both of them were sect leaders, so after greeting each other, they chatted for a while before getting to the main topic. Sect leader Qiao said, "I invited sect leader Yang here today because I had a sudden impulse to change the rules of the previous duel." Yang Shuyong smiled faintly. "Sect leader Qiao, please speak, I'm all ears." Sect leader Qiao said solemnly, "It's simple. Chu has 37 celestial cities and 4 lower sect celestial cities. How about using them to make a bet with your sect?" Using celestial cities? Yang Shuyong was surprised at first, then his eyes lit up and he laughed. He could see the other party's plan. He just wanted to win Xianyu's celestial city fair and square. As long as Zhongtai could defeat Xianyu, they would have one East continent and there wouldn't be any more obstacles for the two sects to unite. He couldn't help but laugh at him for overestimating himself. But this was also what he wanted, so he didn't reject it. If Xianyu won this battle, the remaining Zhongtai disciples in the Chu country might not be convinced and come to defend the immortal city to the death. He wouldn't be able to do anything to them in a short period of time. If he could win in the Dharma assembly, that would be the best. So he said solemnly, Taoist brother Chiao has such spirit, I don't dare to not play with you. But how the rules are set, we need to discuss it in detail. Sect leader Chiao said, if your sect wins, you take a city. If you lose, he looked over, you have to lose a city. Yang Shuyong smiled proudly. I'm just afraid that your sect doesn't have enough celestial cities to lose. Sect leader Chiao pointed behind him and said, other than the celestial city, we still have the Golden Bell Tower, the capital of Chu, and the 5-elephant cauldron that we have worshipped for thousands of years. Is that enough? Yang Shuyong snorted and said, that's more than enough. It's just that fighting back and forth like this. It's inevitable that it'll be dull and boring, but this Yang wants to add a little more excitement. Sect Master Chiao said, please speak, fellow Taoist Yang. Yang Shuyong waved his sleeve and dispersed the astral cloud beneath his feet. He raised his finger and pointed at it, saying, fellow Taoist Chiao, please take a look below. Sleeping Star Mountain has more than 30 hills of different sizes. How about this? Our two clans can use this 1,000-mile radius as a chessboard. Whichever family's disciple was careless and left the mountain during the battle would be considered to have lost the battle. No matter which family's disciple won a round, they would be able to use the mountain as the boundary. The loser could no longer escape. It was like a chess piece that had been set and could not change its mind. What do you think, brother? Sect Master Chiao was silent for a while. He glanced at him and said, fellow Taoist Yang has put in a lot of effort. Yang Shuyong purposely used words to provoke him. Could it be that brother Chiao is afraid of losing? Sect leader Chiao said slowly, just as you said. Since the two of them had already come to an agreement, they were not in the mood to talk anymore. After agreeing on the date of the duel, they exchanged farewell gifts. Then, they returned to their own clan's formation. Sect Master Chiao returned to the Paleo flying carriage and ordered someone to find 6 clan elders. He passed down the rules of the duel just now to them. He didn't care about their reactions and returned to the carriage to circulate his arts and adjust his breathing. However, when Elder Yen heard this, he frowned deeply. Elder Lin had always followed Elder Yan's lead. Seeing his expression, he asked nervously, Senior brother, is there something wrong? Elder Bai's expression was solemn. He said, Xian Yu's intentions are sinister. Sect Master was careless and agreed to it rashly. This is a lack of consideration. If we follow this rule, our sect's cultivators will inevitably have less leeway when moving around. Add to that the fact that we will be confined to one place during the duel, and that will be very disadvantageous for us. Although Zhongtai and Xianyu clans came from the same lineage, Zhongtai's movement techniques were superior to Xianyu's. No matter how one looked at this rule, Zhongtai was at a disadvantage. Elder Yen shook his head slightly and said in a low voice, half of the cultivators here are not disciples of our sect. I suspect that Xianyu's actions are not as simple as they seem. It's just that I can't see through it at the moment. Elder Bai couldn't help but be surprised. He thought for a moment and said, so you're saying that there's more to it? But if Xianyu cult really has some kind of plan, it's too late to back out now. Senior brother, we can only deal with it when the time comes. Elder Yen nodded and said, that's the only way. Order someone to spread the news. Not long after, dozens of messenger disciples flew to various places. Du Shixuan also quickly learned of this. He laughed mockingly. He also thought that Xianyu wanted to suppress Zhongtai's movement technique. He said, Yang Shuyong thinks that he can control our sect with this method? Zhang Yan's eyes flickered slightly. He looked at the surrounding mountains and after a while, he seemed to be thinking of something. Xing Fuliu had tasted the sweetness earlier, and now he stood up and flattered, our Zhongtai has the young sect master watching over it. Xianyu cult is trapped in a cocoon of their own making. Du Shixuan accepted it calmly and said, as long as the two of you help me properly, after we destroy Xianyu, I will reward you generously in addition to the sect's reward. Xing Fuliu was excited, and for a moment his flattery was like a tide. Zhang Yan smiled and cupped his hands to show his thanks. At this moment, a disciple came over and said, "Young sect master, the spell altar has been set up. Elder Yen, please come with us." Du Shixuan looked into the distance and saw that there were already more than 10 spell altars of various sizes surrounding the place where the sect master's carriage had stopped. This was used to communicate with the earth's veins and gather spiritual energy, making it convenient for the people who came here to circulate their energy and rest. He stood up from the flying ship and said, "The two of you, follow me." He turned the flying ship, turned into a ball of rumbling fire, and flew out. He circled the sky once, then suddenly laughed and rushed down to one of the spell altars. After landing with a loud bang, he tore apart the flames and walked out. He glanced sideways at Elder Yen and the other two sitting on the altar and said, "I think this place is not bad, and the view is good. Elder Yen, why don't you let me have it?" According to the rules of etiquette, this spell altar was right next to Sect Master Qiao's Pusho flying carriage, so it should be Elder Yan's place of residence. However, Du Shixuan clearly wanted to take it for himself. Not only did he go against the rules, but he also had the intention of humiliating them. When Elder Lin and Elder Bai heard this, their expressions immediately changed. Elder Yen, however, did not seem to mind. He chuckled and said, "Since young sect master has his eyes on it, then Daoren can just move to another place." Elder Yen stretched out his hand and stopped Elder Lin, who was about to speak, and said, "Let's go." Elder Lin snorted, then glared fiercely at Xing Fuliu and Zhang Yan who were behind Du Shixuan. Only then did he follow Elder Yen to another spell altar to settle down. After sitting down, the more he thought about it, the angrier he felt. He scolded, "This kid is so arrogant, like a mad dog. He is looking down on us more and more. Senior brother, why do you always give in to him?" Elder Yen said indifferently, "Junior brother, the enemy of Xian Yu is in front of us. Don't cause trouble. Everything can be discussed after the battle." Elder Bai also reminded, "Tomorrow's battle will definitely be a fierce battle. Junior brother Lin, don't get angry. Rest well and face the enemy." Elder Lin could only endure it and said in a muffled voice, "Yes, senior brother." On the other side, after Xian Yu's sect master Yang Shuyong returned, Elder Jin Ling came to ask, "Sect master, how is it?" Yang Shuyong didn't look at him. Instead he said to Chunyu Ji, "Messenger Chunyu, Qiao Huanzhuan has fallen into my trap. This time, Zhong Tai can't escape. Quickly go and make arrangements." Chunyu Ji's spirit was lifted. He knew that once the plan succeeded, the matter of Xian Yu devouring Zhong Tai was half done. He immediately cupped his fists and left. The disciples of the two sects knew that tomorrow's battle would be held, so they each rested and didn't disturb each other. Because there were dozens of Yuanian cultivators gathered here, the wind in the Sleeping Star Mountain swirled and stirred up the clouds. Within 1,000 miles, spiritual light shone in the sky. The night passed quickly. On the second day, the sect masters of the two sects dressed up and came out to the spell altar. The two of them first led their disciples to set up the incense table and prayed to the ancestral master in heaven. They then exchanged golden talismans, jade plates, robes, and ribbons to show that they were from the same sect. Once the meal time was over, the ceremonial vessels and items were kept away. The disciples of the two sects returned to their positions and waited for the sect master's order. Yang Shuyong sat on the high platform and said to his left and right, "The first few battles are very important. I expect that after 2 or 3 battles, Zhong Tai will see through my flaws. Who will go first?" Chunyu Ji wanted to go first, but just now he saw an elder with a silver beard and black robe. A horned dragon coiled around his arm walked out, so he stopped. The elder cupped his fists and said, "I'm willing to go." Yang Shuyong nodded and said, "It's best that Protector Lan is willing to go. I will allow it." The elder bowed again and flew away. When he reached the front, he said loudly, "I, Lan Jingguang, accept the position of Protector Elder of Xian Yu. Who will come forward?" Madame Zhao saw that Xian Yu had already called for a battle. She turned her beautiful eyes and saw that Sect Master Qiao was still resting with his door closed. She pushed him and said, "Husband, who will go?" Sect Master Qiao opened his eyes and said, This Lan Jingguang isn't well known. I've never heard of him before and he's not a second-stage cultivator. I don't know where Xian Yu found this helper. Pass down the order and have Elder Yen arrange someone to go up and fight. Madame Zhao felt that her husband was a little strange, but she didn't think too much about it when a great enemy was in front of them. Moreover, in Zhongtai sect, there were many things that the sect master couldn't make decisions by himself. She thought that it was because they were facing a great enemy. She thought of the big picture and expressed her goodwill to the group of elders, so she passed down the order. Elder Yen and a few other disciples discussed for a while and quickly sent out someone. This person wasn't a disciple of Zhongtai sect, but a cultivator from another sect that was recruited. It was obvious that they weren't sure of Lan Jingguang's background and sent him up to test him. The Yuanian cultivator was also a cautious person. After reporting his name, he didn't rush to attack. Instead, he took a few steps back and took out his Dharma treasure and protective treasure light in one breath, forming a tight defense. Lan Jingguang glanced at him coldly and suddenly threw the horned dragon in his hand. This thing was originally only a few feet long, but once it left his hand, it shook its body and suddenly grew to dozens of feet long. Its two fierce eyes glared and emitted a bright red light. The Yuanian cultivator was stunned when he saw this. Before he could react, the horned dragon swallowed him in one gulp. Lan Jingguang's expression was indifferent. With a wave of his hand, the horned dragon shrank back to a few feet long and coiled around his arm again. He then bowed towards Sect Master Qiao of Zhongtai Sect and returned to Xian Yu's formation. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.